There's nothing normal about what's going on.
Right.
We're on this planet that's, flying in space, all these physical laws that contradict each other, that don't make sense, all these different levels of physics and what's going on different levels of reality. Which is the guy, the greatest of the warriors and everything that succeeded in that, who we can call who succeeded at the end.
Well, they never succeeded.
At the end, you don't succeed. But that's the stupid part, right?
This is nice. I want more of this, right? Imagine you never experienced this.
Instinct for power that we talked about, right?
Right.
It's got to be plugged into that.
Why do animals do this then? Well, they explaining, and the process doesn't explain itself. It's saying, hey, this is the reality, just accept it. Like, no, it's an experience, but
nothing makes sense.
Yeah, but that's how the mystical part, right?
But that's a person, dude. They are someone's headache right now.
Yep.
What the hell is that? How is that a person?
Consciousness is part of the fabric of reality, right? What if the emergent property of this thing is what we call consciousness, right? If we have these, let's say organism being aware, conscious, and from animals will be instinct, they act on instinct, but even they could sense pleasure and pain and these kind of things we call thoughts. I'm sure animals have a thought process as well, right? Maybe rudimentary, but they still have it. Just like I've seen those videos about dogs, they're so intelligent. Some of them are dumb, but some of them are intelligent. So like you can train them and they can actually understand what you're saying, like all the commands and stuff. It's not just all like, what do you call that? It's not just like Pavlov's.
Not reflexes.
Not reflex, no. Like they actually understand what you're asking them, and they, do stuff that you ask them to do. So it's like, that part of that, I keep thinking that is the rudimentary process of this thing happening where, the neuron, if you will, and all this kind of forming together, these processes inevitably that's where it arises from, forming these kind of superstructure maybe, right? The idea of a hive mind, right? And a structure of things that are...
that's how I ended up thinking about the concept of something like a god. But the way he described it totally makes sense to me, because a human is a hive mind of their cells, essentially, because there's a huge amount of intelligence on each level of the whole system. When you really try to delve into what intelligence is and how life assembled itself into a human, there's a whole ass amount of things communicating, working, and signaling, and applying behavior based on conditions. That's just different degrees of intelligence all the way throughout, right? And that's how, through us, this awareness emerges through all of this. But who's to say what it means to be for those other cells, what it's like for them? Because they're technically alive, right? That's what we define as life. It's some kind of intelligent interaction with the environment where you are trying to survive, essentially. And that's just on a cellular level. It starts
more and more I wouldn't say convinced, but I feel like it's probably have a certain degree of truth in that maybe perhaps even on a particle level, what we call consciousness is part of that structure. So the fundamental quantum mechanics is actually what creates, let's just say, for the sake of not having the right word for it, the technical word, but let's just say that the superstructure, right? Underneath the reality, the reality are being created by these fundamental particles interaction, and maybe part of it is aspect that creates consciousness, right? So it's like an emergent property, right? So that's the only way that it makes sense for it to explain why.
Can you explain it in a bit more detail as a bit by bit? Because what you're saying right now, it's like, I recognize the word
sci-fi,
but if you were to explain, here's thing number one and here's thing number two. Because right now we're just saying fabric of reality, quantum mechanics, but what? Say a full sentence of what is happening.
Which is why it's so hard to explain it, because I don't know if this is exactly correct, right? Nobody knows. But from what I'm reading in regard to these topics, it feels like, this is just totally my own interpretation. It feels like the gist of it is that I think that it makes sense that the way reality is constructed is from the bottom up, right? So from the basic particles all the way
So
up
there
to
are some basic particles.
Yeah.
And then what happens?
And given what we kind of know about quantum mechanics being it's just weird, right? How they can be entangled from, vast distances without actually communicating, right? So meaning maybe something about entanglement as a property is kind of how thoughts
But
are.
that's
I know it's conjecture. I know it's totally
but
conjecture.
I don't know. I don't understand how it follows from anything. So right now we have particles, and they have some kind of immaterial connection with each other, regardless of distances. What does that have to do with anything? How does that become consciousness?
Meaning there is a way for it to, let's just say, communicate, right? And how do thought form, right? Now, again, this is totally unscientific. I'm just saying I think it is.
We're just
But
theorizing.
if you think about how, like neuron structure.
You think that that's just what that's what means for everything to be connected? Just the fact that there is some kind of almost like underlying thread through everything that connects.
It feels like this
every
is
little bit to every
so.
Little
If
bit.
you, let's just say, if we go backward and if you explain, find a way to explain consciousness. If you say that this is the fundamental part of everything, just like physical facts, right? Like physics, right? It has its own certain rules and how it arises, how these things come together.
Well,
let's
of course
just
it
say
does. Everything has that, right?
So meaning, right? So in this way to explain consciousness, then it makes sense because you're saying essentially, okay, it's arising from the fundamental particle systems and whatever. So meaning that it emerges as natural as everything else. So you don't have to form a specific explanation. Say, oh, well, consciousness is this thing that's completely like it's a separate thing in itself. It has nothing to do with the. I mean, you know how a lot of people will say that there got to be something special about this consciousness, and how that form, how it came to be, and as if it's a separate thing. So what if, I guess
it's a separate thing in itself, that it's unique and there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
And we don't know how it comes to be, right? And why it exists. Like why, for example, the arguments that I've seen or the questions that I've seen myself, I haven't even formed them myself. I saw other people question it, but they're asking essentially under the hard question, the hard problem of consciousness is, why is there a conscious experience instead of just like a computer processing inputs and outputs? Why isn't there just like a meat robot that's like sensing there's an apple, eat apple, go for it? Like, why isn't there just this robotic sensor? Because computer have sensors and they're like, okay, this is an apple. It like has a program that reads apple, but the computer doesn't have an internal experience. It doesn't know what an apple is other than these abstracted set of properties. So that's the question. In that sense, consciousness is unique because essentially consciousness is knowing what it's like to experience something. But then there's throughout all of the time that humans existed, throughout all of the sciences that have existed, there's nothing that we can even bridge. The language doesn't even allow us to bridge any kind of understanding of what is to this consciousness. Because when you say, so after that, like all of the sayings that you can say about consciousness, it doesn't really make much sense to me.
Yeah.
Because if you say consciousness is fundamental, what does that mean? Like, what does that actually mean? Does that mean that matter comes from consciousness? Is that what you're saying?
It's part of, I guess I'm saying it is part of, I know this sounds like I'm just talking out of my ass, right?
But that's all we can do.
Which is what we're all doing, right? I mean, imagine we define this thing as consciousness, but what is consciousness? We don't know, right?
Why do we use this word? Distill it in a laboratory and it's like, this is consciousness. Yeah, exactly. I made it. There's nothing we can do.
Right. So we're all talking out of our ass. But in saying that, I guess what I'm trying to say is that how do I even describe it? I guess the idea is that it's part of the fabric of reality. Basically, it's part of everything, which is why we experience it, right? Now, how? Or what does that mean for the brain to be, like imagine you being alive, you being able to be aware. Like, okay, what does that mean? Is that like a signal that I received and therefore I have it? And what about sleep? I'm out, right? And then what does that mean? I'm still alive, but I don't experience anything. But why when I wake up I start experiencing? Does that mean like signal get turned off on sleep mode, or what is it, right? So
Yeah, because they're like that's an interesting part that also there are so many theories that are try to approach from different angles, and the theories is almost like a fun little part, fun little games, like, oh,
yeah,
maybe it could be this, but to me they all sound like very creative, interesting stories, in the sense that, yeah, that could be the case, but then it still goes back to proving any bit of it in any
yeah,
way, and that's difficult.
which is the most difficult.
The closest that I think, the only thing that we've been able to really tackle, and I actually seen some a video on that like yesterday, that maybe I'll bring it into this one because it was one of the best videos that I've seen on the topics. It was talking about how it was talking about psychedelics and different people and scientists and different influencers talk about how they reveal how brain constructs reality,
Mm,
because from the
right.
effects of those substances, we can see how the reality that you normally perceive gets distorted. But what does that mean? So the reality that you experience right now, the stable everyday reality, that's just a stable version of it. But if it can be completely destabilized and changed very radically, which like subjectively, that's what you experience. You experience like a totally different reality, but still like objectively, you're still this body and you're still like you're lying over there. So nothing's happening to you. But the fact that a completely different type of thing can be
Yeah,
happening
yeah,
in your subjective experience, there's some kind of hint there. There's got to be, that's like the most accessible entrance to this thing is. And judging by what kind of wild experiences people have had, and it's almost like you unlock some kind of space where just the ideas and thoughts behave very differently. It's almost like you're taking a dive into a bigger ocean of this conscious space where you're becoming aware of more stuff. So I think what that video was showing is that they mostly were talking about how this brain we have is like a filter. So it filters down, I guess, everything that is into just this stable,
yeah.
narrow environment
Because
and reality, because everything else it would not be manageable, essentially. It would be
yeah,
just, I guess,
it's
static or something, like everything.
yeah. So we often think that we see with our eyes, but really you see with your brain, because whatever is through this is just the instrument. The eye is just the instrument by which the light is captured. So it's the image that you actually experience is what the brain interprets. So that's the crazy part. So you're making it up. You're making all of this up, right? By brain interpreting the data. So that means
Right. I think I remember the crucial part there is that, because there were neuroscientists talking about, right? Like there are people that are actually studying this stuff, but they were saying something loopy. I'll get some direct quotes here in a second, but they were talking that the brain essentially generating predictions,
yeah.
but the reality that you would see right now, that you think, oh, this is a computer, that itself is a prediction made by the brain.
Mm.
That's how crazy it is.
Right. It
Which means that you
determines
never see reality. You never see the
is
physical, objective reality.
being determined by it, right?
It's always the prediction. That's what's being so shown to you. That's what like the down there. It's like all kinds of like, oh, I think it's going to be this now, and this. I think that's what it's going to be. This now is what you're seeing. So,
Yeah, which
which is
does
crazy.
goes along with the idea how those particles can just be in the state if once you observe. So imagine it's just falling into that prediction matrix or whatever it is, right? Like it came to be, right? So I mean, I don't know, right? Even thinking about that, yeah, that is crazy, right? The fact that your brain are interpreting all this stuff. It's like you don't have a choice in this, right? It's like what you see, how you see it. It's almost like determined way, not determined by you, it's determined by whatever this whole processing, how it came to be. right? And that's kind of scary because that just means, yeah, you are no in control of anything, right? I mean, all these processes, biological processes, they're happening without your consent, essentially. You're just like, okay, well, you just have to agree to it, right? If you gotta go, you gotta go. You gotta go to the bathroom, you gotta go to the bathroom. That's just the process, how it is. Same with how the brain interprets all this information and how it's like whatever your personality or whatever else, what's already born, it will interpret in its own specific way, right? It's almost like you don't have a personality per se, other than that this is what you're given and this is how it responds to the environment, right?
Yeah, I was also thinking about the other day. I was reading some stuff on Reddit and I was thinking about somebody essentially brought in like reincarnation into like, because there's a reincarnation, everybody needs like some Buddhist stuff essentially. And at this point, I've been so through these ideas that I'm like, I don't believe in reincarnation. Like, I for sure think that it's just a human lie in terms of how it's presented in Buddhism, because what they're saying essentially, yes, in order to avoid, you know, falling down the incarnation scale, because human is awesome, human is like great, you have intelligence, but you could be reborn as animal, insect, etc., etc. In order to avoid that, you need to practice, have moral existence, and then you won't be reborn as like a grasshopper. But to me, it doesn't make sense on any level because I don't have memories of past lives. So in what way, which part of me is going to be reborn in a grasshopper if there's not going to be anybody cognizing that they're a Vlad reborn as a grasshopper? In what fucking way is that me then? So on that level, it doesn't make any sense, right?
And
that,
and
yeah,
and who needs to know?
yeah, apparently. But that made me think like the only way that would work if we did retain our memories of what's going on. Because then it's like, crap, yeah, I got born as a grasshopper. I fucked up. Okay, this life I'm going to do better, right?
Yeah,
Then
that's
it
the only
makes
way it
sense because
works.
we can actually learn. Because everything is based on memory. Like
Yeah,
if you forget everything, like there's no you. So that made me think about the fact that I am my memories. Anything that I can call myself
yeah,
is my memories. If my memory goes tomorrow, goodbye. I'm no longer a friend, man. This is not gonna happen. I'm not
yeah,
gonna know who you are. I don't remember
yeah.
nothing. I'm not gonna be the same person. So we're memories. We're our memories. That's the most self that you can think of. Because as soon as that goes, what's left? Just some LLM essentially. If the only thing that you retain like language, then you're just like this rogue, crazy
Yeah.
LLM model, which is like, okay, I know language. What does it mean? What does it mean to know? Whoa, whoa. And then that's it. You're insane because you don't know what the hell's going on, who you are, where you came from, what happened to you. You know, origin point. There's no you. There's just some meat robot with ability to like make sounds.
So the moral of the story is sell your house, bet everything on SanDisk or any of those companies that makes RAMs.
Oh yeah.
That's the gist of the story. Okay, case closed.
Uh, well, I mean, if anything, because that's a popular sci-fi plot too, right? The digital memory, ghost in the shell,
Yeah.
brain in a vat. It's been explored in so many sci-fi. One of my favorite ones was done by this Russian writer that I told you about before, Pelevin.
Oh yeah.
He's doing some crazy like half sci-fi, half dystopia, half spiritual, religious type of experiences, weird mixes. But in this one world, essentially with advent of technology, his writing started to reflect that because he's always essentially tries to release like a book a year at this point, I think,
Wow.
just to like, because every year stuff changes so much like in the world and in culture that if you go back, like if you trace back what's been happening every year, there's a lot of stuff
A
happening.
lot.
The socially, economically, culturally, politically, technologically, there's so much stuff happening. And he makes a spin on everything, like kind of makes a play, a joke, a reflection, on it. use in the current times. But one, yeah, theme that I liked he did was that in the future, kind of like the techno utopia, where the technology did become that you could be like stored and your consciousness could live digitally,
Hmm.
right? So if
Yeah.
you, but that is a high roller type of privilege because
Uh,
that requires a lot of bank. Because guess what? Somebody has to pay for the servers and the electricity, and
yeah,
all
yeah.
the maintenance. So there is the company who essentially owns this stuff, and it's 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 kind of like the king of the world essentially because it owns immortality. So you could be immortal, but rent is still due.
Yeah.
The rent is still due, and they make so many plays on this because you're reading like a scenario, some wild fantasy, and then it kind of slowly zooms out and builds out like, okay, but this is actually like just some brains and vats in the maintenance house, and there's still like gangsters, there's still high rollers who are trying to like mess with others by invading their virtual realities or playing, like making them play their games. It's so wild, but it's so creative that I'm like, I can totally see it working because he's using like the current modern culture and juxtaposing it onto that reality, because like humans will still be the same assholes that they ever been. So the same realities apply there. But I like that part, that the fact that, yeah, you could like live in this virtual reality, but you're still tied to the physical laws. Like the baseline reality has to birth that
Yeah.
virtual one and take care of it and then generate it. And if you're not organizing, if you're not paying for it essentially, then you can't exist. Oh, and also there were like tiers. There are tiers to the afterlife because they're perks. You can get to the next tier and you get more perks and what you can afford. It was hilarious, the fact that there's like economy even into this virtual, essentially. You can have whatever you want. There's still like tiers. Still
That, that's
capitalism.
the that's basically a description of humanity from human history. Basically, it's been creating these tiers of privileges out of the world, right? With the advent of technology, these things get vamped up, but it's still the same old game. Yeah, we're all creating these things out of quote unquote nothing, and then we revolve our lives around it, right? Which is, again, it keeps going back to how I think about life. It's just weird. Like, yeah, we do all these things but they are just kind of like sandcastle, sandbox games that we create. Okay, this is the rule. We play around this, and then this is how everybody wake up in the morning, do the thing that they do day in, day out to play this game, right? And the rule makes, yeah, certainly doesn't make sense. But then if you think deeply about it, it's like, wow, this is absurd. Like, we're playing this, right? We're playing this. Let's just pretend that this is the way things will be, and then you know, just pay up for the next level.
The sometimes the way I start to think about it is that like we're approaching it as if it is like a problem. It's a problem in the sense that it's a mystery, right? Like we
Yeah.
actually do not know how this came to be, why it came to be this way, what the rules are, where it came from, where it's going. All of this up for interpretation. It's up for speculation. But what I started thinking about is how else would you rather make it yourself if you were designing something akin to a world or reality from scratch? And it makes me think that whatever you may end up making, it would have some kind of logic and reason to it, right? Because you think it through. It's like, okay, I'll make it this way, but on second thought, on second iteration, it wouldn't work because of this, this, and this. So like any project, like if you try to build anything or try to, create anything, there will be mistakes, there will be iterations. And on each mistake and iteration, you will notice something and you will learn. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this needs to be. So this thinking through, it can be quite an infinite process. Like it doesn't really never stop because like reality just seems to be infinite. Like there's just enough of things interacting, enough of components interacting. But even if you were to start from the simplest and the most like just one-dimensional particles or something. There is no end to this complexity and iterations because that's just how mind works in general. You know, like we did episodes on art before, and we talked about how great art is never finished. And that's all I can think about is that you just keep going, essentially. You know, there is no real reason for you to stop. And if you start thinking about something like some kind of godlike entity without limits to resources or time, then it has no reason to stop. So it would be developing a more and more and more complex creation. And I think that's what this reality is. Because now we are, as far as we're concerned, where the human brain is one of, might be the most complex thing in the universe that we've seen. But then we keep evolving new technologies. You know, we're making AI, us are making a complexity now. And that complexity is going exponential, if anything, we've seen from the technology evolution in the past, 20 or 30 years. So we are definitely reaching some kind of singularity where the complexity or the speed of change or something is gonna go ballistic.
Nobody's stopping us, right? There's
Yeah.
almost nothing. I mean, then, show me some aliens, right? If they want to stop us, they show me some aliens, and then we'll talk, right? It's like, yeah, who else are stopping us from doing all this stuff? You can say that, oh, it's stupid, it's whatever, but all it is just human doing things, right? It's breaking the old cycle, it's breaking the traditions and whatever, and, coming into new. And this will always happen, right? It's been happening in human history, and it will always happen. So there's nothing that stops it. It will be changed, right? Whether positive or negative in some ways, it will change. Just like this whole AI thing is really just fundamentally why people are doing it is that they try to understand what consciousness is. Why is it that we possess this thing and somehow right now, at least, we can't create an AI thing where it actually is intelligent? It's not there yet, right? AGI is not there yet. So it's like this is a fundamental math, physics, whatever you call it, problem that people try to solve. Like, okay, can we find out about this, right? It's almost part of the experimentation for the study of consciousness. The creation of AI is basically an experiment trying to find out, doing tests, right? To see if we can create an intelligence that's I just say, as smart as us or comparable. If we can do that, then maybe we can understand what makes humans tick, what makes human intelligence special, or what is it that, allow us to have this whatever is going on right now, right? This whole self-awareness, consciousness, and clearly we can see this is what the current AI is lacking. Like, yeah, it can generate all these answers. You can search up you can scrape the bottom of the barrel for information and present it to us, but then it's not thinking. Doesn't have judgment.
Yeah,
It doesn't
it's just
process it in the way of
information processing algorithm. That's all it is. It doesn't
that's all
have
it
to do
is.
anything with consciousness or a mind. The only connection is to intelligence, because intelligence is able to recognize patterns and is in a certain way running algorithms, right? It's also kind of hard to define. But even in playing games, essentially, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to find a winning strategy, right? But a strategy is just another pattern. It's just a sequence of things that you could deploy in different scenarios. But really, if you detect this pattern, you reply with this pattern. But that's algorithmic. That you can program that in. You can say, you can program both the patterns and you can program the recognition and you can program the condition to trigger the response pattern. So all of this is logical. It's just logic, right? You can do it with ones and zeros. But in humans, like in our mind, all of this is happening automatically alongside all the other stuff, including feelings and emotions, which is tied to the experience itself. That's where like I don't think we can make a consciousness, artificial consciousness, because it's an oxymoron. Because consciousness by default means an ability to experience. But I mean, for something like that to happen, for say tomorrow somebody makes some kind of invention or discovery, and they are able to, I mean, they would have to build it and program it to somehow, I mean, that doesn't make sense, but there would have to be some kind of cognition and experiencing happening somewhere. At best, I can think of it's going to be a simulation of it. But the problem is that to us, it's indistinguishable from the real thing because we can't even compare each other's experiences. We don't have access to the experiential space to do anything about it. We only have brains, but brains themselves are sensors. So we just have these lots of little mysteries that are tricky to navigate. I want to show you this cool little infographic I just made based on that YouTube video, and because it structures that information so well. Essentially, the what I was asking you in the beginning is like it's good to start in the beginning and then bit by bit progress to something where you're like leading one thread from beginning to end and you're considering all the right things. Like, we're not scientists, we don't know stuff, so this is why it's so difficult to even talk about this as a just regular person. But I thought that video combines all these little facts and historical facts about what happened and experiences that people had, that it's really pertinent to what we're talking about. So let me share this thing. We can go through it together. Yeah, so this is like a little infographic that ChatGPT just made, which is crazy.
Damn.
It's like, imagine this. Before, this would take a graphic designer
A long time. I mean,
a few days.
yeah.
I mean,
Generate an image, get the text in the right place, and
yeah, structure everything, flow. It's like that's the testament of technology. Like, I studied graphic design, so I know what's involved. For like a human to do this, it's a bit of work.
yeah.
And now that's just not needed.
In the span of what? You just
Yeah.
did this, right?
Yeah, because I just like, oh, I want to show this information to my friend. Before, I would have to like book off a weekend to make this, like to do this for you. It's crazy. Like, you couldn't even afford to do it in time wise, because if you don't have time, you're not gonna have this. But now to have this as like educational aid is incredible. And of course, you can break down any information like this and present it like this. And it's much easier to both learn and comprehend stuff when it's presented visually. But yeah, like, this is, we're gonna go through this, and feel free to jump into anything, because this is just jumping off board for what we're talking about. Is just, it does a nice job of kind of describing what happened in the history of humans when we discovered psychedelics. So it talks about Aldous Huxley, who I think some doctor or somebody like who discovered the substance, or was dealing with some kind of scientist, gave it to him. So he wanted to try it, what it's like. So he took mescaline and experienced the dissolution of the ego, timelessness, and the direct encounter with naked existence. He believed the brain is reducing a valve, filtering us from a more expansive reality. And this is just a human who tried this unknown thing, right, for the first time. And these are the conclusions and the insights and the ideas that he naturally had based on nothing. It's not like nobody indoctrinated him. He didn't read anything. He was just a person. And then he tried this stuff, and that's what he came up with, right? He's not a scientist. He's a writer. And that was kind of one of the early episodes from this. So he experienced, ego dissolution, timelessness, unity, sacredness, profound meaning. And then he said stuff like, the urge to transcend self-consciousness is a principal appetite of the soul, which is crazy poetic, but even that, like, where would that come from? It's almost like, it's a self-statement, like, where would that come from?
I mean, this is where we have the Brave New World, right?
Yeah.
The book you wrote about it. I mean, how in that story, the idea of soma. Yeah, it's the fact that people would resort to taking pills to experience, to basically alleviate any sort of anxiety and things. And this is the kind of world that I mean, again, in the literary term, right? His book is as monumental as George Orwell's 1984. posing the question, what's not just what's most more likely, but more like fundamental to human reality of what would you do if you discover something, let's say, as powerful as psychedelics, right? In this case, because of experience, I guess that really informed him how he wanted to write the book. But again, it's a much more, I don't know, maybe that's the much more likely dystopia that people will be living in, given how addicted we are to experiences and things like drugs, how there's a meth epidemic, right? That, and I don't know, crack and whatever else that's happening around, in
Yeah.
every corner of the cities, people being addicted to this stuff and fentanyl, all that. You're like, yeah, people can be very much trapped into that because it's
But that's the weird part is that all those other types of drugs, which are not psychedelics, they are of different nature, it seems. How would you say it? They are definitely detrimental because they just leave you down a spiral of dysfunction and just, death, essentially. But that is the opposite of psychedelics.
Yeah, but in the same vein, they are, you can't say okay, they're all drugs in the same way that okay, they might have different effects, but fundamentally they are altering how we
Right.
experience. And that in itself is such a break the fourth wall kind of thing. I think a lot of humans can't really take that.
Yeah, there's something about escaping the reality, right? That all the substances do for humans.
Yeah, it's part of that. You know how it's like, yeah, once it's like these near death experiences, right? Those people who gone through that, like it fundamentally changes them because there is no way after that happens that you can still live life, quote unquote, normally. Say, like still, I mean, everything. The context changed, right? It changes
Yeah.
the way in which you experience everything because that happened, and that I think like fundamental, like we are very much, you can even say that we're resistant to that kind of change because as much as we can say, oh, my life is boring and nothing is happening, blah, 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 I wish things could be this and that. And, but fundamentally, if you start seeing is so much more or so much more different than what you expect, that totally changes you. And for some ways, it's very unpredictable what that will mean, right? Imagine if you've gone through the process of
Yeah.
an experience like that, and then it's like, well, how do you quantify it? You only have two choices: accept that you don't know what's going on, and like pretend that everything is normal, right? So it's no longer normal. So it's like you
But
you had to,
the normal is just your blissful
typical
state of
experience,
ignorance,
yeah,
essentially. It's
yeah,
just your not awareness of where this comes from. There's nothing normal about what's going on.
right.
We're on
But
this
that's
planet
even,
that's, flying in space, all
yeah,
these physical laws that contradict each other, that don't make sense, all these different levels of physics and what's going on different levels of reality, which happens differently based on what you inspect and how you do it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's already infinitely complex. But once you go through that type of experience, which like I like the term ontological shock, because it makes you question, it makes you realize like, oh, things are even more strange and confusing than I thought it was. Because I mean, you're gonna have to wrestle. I was like, what the hell was that, right? What was that when your whole reality transformed like that? And there's no other way to say it, that because your perception is your reality. So if you're suddenly perceiving like all this wild stuff that you don't even have the language for, because that just doesn't exist in everyday life, then what is that? Like, where did that come from? What is that? Like, what is the nature of it, right? Why is it like that? So all these extra questions that you get. So and that's why it's a shock, because you become aware of more mysterious aspects of the nature of just reality, I guess. Because, you now have to think about what is the relationship between your mind, the substances, and reality. They're
yeah,
they're they're just more variables now.
and you got to think about the levels because there are more levels now, right?
Yeah.
Because you thought life was just, oh, at this level that we're living in, but then
Yeah.
there are other levels. So how far are you wanting to go? Which is kind of. what informs about human ambition actually, if you actually go back to history, a lot of the human achievements and things like that is just the quest of, I just say, certain individual or a group of people trying to make sense of the world, right? Back in the day, it will be the gods, whatever it is, right? They kind of trying to make sense of it by appeasing to these entities and deities, or conversely, they think that, oh, maybe there is no God. Maybe I can be the God. And you see that in the unfolding of human ambition and the
Hmm.
quest to conquer the world, or you know whatever else. But fundamentally, it's just these people are explaining their behavior in a certain way, right? By their actions, by what they say, and it's all come down to, like, imagine all the famous historical figures. There will be a time when they wake up at the middle of the night and they're like, okay, what am I doing here?
Hmm.
What's the goal I'm trying to do here? They have an answer, right? They have an answer for themselves, like why they're doing all this stuff, right? It could be very selfish. It could be just, oh, I want to be the guy. I want to be the number one dude on this planet, whatever,
Hmm.
right? But fundamentally, they're trying to answer the question. Okay, well, I got to do something, right?
Hmm.
I can't just sit around and do nothing. And so, yes, they do see these pressures around them with society, with whatever else, and they're like, okay, I see the pattern, I see all these things, but what do I want? And somehow, in the most basic sense, in other ways, these individuals think that, oh, I'm just gonna take control of everything, and maybe that's the best thing that the best thing that one could do. Which is why do these people pursue position of power? I mean, it does get them things, but it doesn't automatically answer anything, right? I mean,
Yeah, it doesn't. It's just kind of like you find yourself in this environment. You're like, okay, how do I, be in the best position in this environment?
yeah, that's the
But
fundamentally the most basic take.
but the thing is, like, as a new human, imagine, like, so you've been around, for a couple decades. So at this point, you know what it's like to be on this planet. You know a little bit about humans, what they're like, but it's a learning process. So
Yeah.
if you were started and you're young and you don't know much, you just have these ideas. So if anything, your brain is probably working in overtime trying to predict stuff at that point because you not don't have that much data that you've gathered throughout living. But you have a lot of like erroneous essentially assumptions about the world, and some of them
Yeah.
are of I don't know if that's the right use of the word, of the teleological nature, which means like you are not the way you are making your goals. It's based on very limited and oftentimes faulty premises, right? It's
Mm.
but it's that hubris that even allows you to think like you can be on top of the world. That itself is crazy because it doesn't work. Which guy succeeded? Which is the guy, the greatest of the warriors and everything that succeeded in that? Who we can call who succeeded at the
Well,
end?
they never succeeded.
At the end, there you don't
Yeah.
succeed. But
It's
that's the stupid part, right? I mean, if you were a smart person, you would be able to recognize it from the get go and understand that such a goal is just dumb. It's not even doable. And the only thing that you achieve along the way, what you achieve for sure, is destruction and
yeah.
and pain and suffering. That's definitely what you achieve. So
Right. But that's what the selfish human nature is that they don't care, or they rather everything burn, right? It's like, I don't give a fuck. If I get to experience even a little bit of glory or whatever, it's like, it's worth it. They don't care how many people die, right? That's fundamental how selfish it is. Imagine if any of these historical figures who kill so many people, right? Like, as the direct result of their actions and their policies or whatever. If they actually care about human beings, they wouldn't have done it, right? They're like, I only care about my own power, my own
right,
experience, and at the expense of everybody else's.
yeah,
They don't care. Why else? I mean, because
yeah.
to them, they win. Like, I experience all the things I want to experience, and you didn't get to. Who cares?
It reminds me of this joke some comedians make about the fact that in United States, people who say that they buy guns for protection. I think was it Jim Jeffries joke? Yeah, it was like Oh yeah, you're reading the self-defense magazines, right? You're having those hunting rifles and shotguns there for home defense. Like, oh yes, I'm so safe and secure. This is just for my defense. That's not what's going on. It's people who are like, oh yeah, the power. I can have the whole army if I want to. It's that drive, it's that instinct, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Wait.
If you're interested in defense and protection and prosperity of your realm, you'll be just fortifying your stuff. You'll be building up your people. You'll be training everybody, teaching everybody. That does not mean you have to go to war with anybody.
So this is the other part I was thinking. You know how our ancestors, and I just say also from animals such as gorillas and all these, I just say the alpha behavior, right? The model of whoever is the strongest will be in the position of power, and then the structure being that, okay, you gotta have challengers, and the old one get defeated, and new one get installed in place, and they control everything. I mean, that was the model for tens of thousands of years in the animal kingdom, right? For many animals, that's how it is. Like the lions, the gorillas, even the chimpanzees, they have an aspect of that. And I was just thinking, what happens in the mind of a gorilla, for example, when they first fought the old alpha and they won, and they stand there, look down on all the other gorillas, and he recognizes that these other gorillas ascended to his ascendancy. Like he recognized that they obeyed. They're like, okay, you are the number one. I keep thinking about that particular gorilla.
Best feeling in the world.
How does it feel, right? I mean, they're animals, but they have feelings. They have.
They feel it,
right? They'll be like,
they feel that shit.
This is nice. I want more of this, right? Imagine you never experienced this.
Instinct for power that we talked about, right?
Right.
It's got to be plugged into that.
Why do animals do this then? They gotta be part of it. It's just they feel these. It gotta be, whether you can say is chemical, is whatever, but that's how they would feel, as same as a human would, right? Like if you get to a position of power and you're like, well, finally I defeated my arch nemesis, and now I become the king of whatever.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody bows down to you. You would feel something. That something is to a lot of people, is very addicting. It's like, yeah, I don't care what I have to do. I want to keep this. Right?
Yeah.
Even at the cost of their own life, because how many people get assassinated through.
Well, that's what power is, right? It's addicting. Like if even some movies and TV shows kind of portray it, it's almost like it's its own. What is it? Like what is power? It is just an aspect of human society, but it's also like a role, right? So mostly people bow down to a role itself, like the king, or the leader, whatever. It's a title. It's not really as much as even a specific person, because you can't even know a specific person that much,
Yeah, it is
but
a
they
role.
step into this role,
right?
And we have this relationship with the role. So it's part of this social structure, which itself is kind of not exactly made up, but it's not like a specific and objective as anything, because different people can step up and down power and climb ladder, fall down, etc. It's just one big social game, right?
Which is, but it's interesting because you see these animals do it too. So they're like, okay, so something, even they form these structures. Like they intuitively understand this is how the game is played, and they play by those rules, right? They understand they probably even understand, that's replaceable. But
it's players and an environment. An environment has resources, and players are just at the very least as intelligent as you are, and they want the same thing as you are. So there's this weird reality where you all want the same stuff, and you're technically all competing for the same stuff.
But humans are smart enough to figure out this is a problem, right? Which is why we have our modern day society where, and again, this all ties into the sexual revolution, right? Evolution, sorry, evolution, not revolution, revolution. Because that selection pressure, right? Imagine in those gorilla societies, okay, the winner takes all. So he have access to all the female when he win the title, right? So everybody, all the other individuals saying, this is not fair. I want that, right? So this is never-ending problem because it's always going to have challengers who challenge the old guy, and then
Welcome
if
to
they
the
win,
male reality.
they get the rewards, right? That's the loop. But there means constant warfare, right? The society cannot grow because you cannot cooperate at all. You're just always fighting because everybody's just fighting for those limited resources. So humans figured out, okay, this is a problem. So eventually human society developed rules and things like religion, for example, where it dictates, okay, one man, one woman, you guys married, and then you will be a family. That's the whole thing. God wants it. And then, okay, if you believe into that, then it's like, okay, it's fair for everybody now, right? You get to have.
Yeah, but none of that ever worked.
Yeah, but
because they're still like the humans, they don't care. Like you still do the stuff, whatever you want behind the closed doors, and
right, you can't stop that from happening. But this whole system at least create the illusion that
it's
yes,
the
you
illusion
can,
and the pretense,
right?
Yeah.
Because now you're like those monkeys are. Imagine we evolve. We're just like gorillas, but we evolve to a point where we recognize, you know what? How about let's stop fighting because this is just exhausting. Okay, if we want to live better, then we just have equal access to everything, right? And then you have to prove, I mean, you still have structures, you still have social structures, but that means you're going to have to be a cooperative in a cooperative mode. In this society, you have to cooperate with other people. You got to negotiate with other people and not just like, oh, I win, I'm the alpha, I take everything.
Right. That's the, what would you call it? Is that the part of a cultural evolution? The fact that we are essentially going forward, we're trying to go for it at least?
Because that's the part of the intelligence, like intelligence. Like you figure out, okay, this is a problem. How do we solve it? Because this is creating more problem than it's worth. Because as society grew, you have more people to deal with. And then even the people who are in the old model were the one that takes power. They're like, this is a problem because these people try to overthrow me all the time. Like this is a huge issue. It's going to be huge wars happening for years, and then at the end of the day, another guy getting in power, and the cycle repeats again. Everybody gets tired of this eventually, right?
Right.
Which is why you have the society develop in this. Okay, well, because I think about it, we are just like animals. It's all about hormones, about sex, about procreation. So at the end of the day, every single male is thinking about the females, right? It doesn't matter if you're an animal, a gorilla, or you humans. So inherently, when that is in play where the alpha takes all, you're just like, this is unfair. So eventually you're going to rebel. You're going to find coalitions or whatever, and you're going to try to defeat the guy, or you try to be the next alpha, right? It's all going to be like this, right? So eventually people are like, you know what? We need to find a way in which everybody can just at least chill out, right? So
it reminds me of the movie Demolition Man with Sylvester Stallone. Remember that masterpiece?
Yeah.
It's been a while since I watched it. But they had that society in future where they kind of went in the direction of furthering and furthering away from this animal instinct, right? Because there's no physical sex anymore. They have those virtual sets where they just like experience feelings of connection or whatever. So it reminded me of that like, is that where it has to go for us to like stop being animals? But that's too much. That's like you become so far removed from nature because you come from nature. You are nature.
Right.
So to just start messing with these fundamental processes from which is that really how evolution can work? That you take charge of the evolution yourself, you make it artificial, and you start constructing your culture and your species in a way that you conceive of yourself, like intelligently constructed. Is that really possible?
Well, that's the part of the question, how, we define ourselves as an intelligent species, and that intelligence, manifests in this way, right? You're smart enough to kind of see, and again, this is the part of the problem of consciousness, is like you start going meta. You start saying, oh, why are we doing this? Why are we experiencing the thing as we do experience? And so you start thinking and altering the plan, right? Because that's just how is an attribute of being intelligent.
So yeah, we can connect and bring it back to what we're talking about, because I like the way this starts from a very fundamental position where even to think of what life is, of what anything is, it highlights the fact that the biggest problem of life is entropy and chaos, which is just it's a fact. And we just see it in reality when we examine it. And the universe is moving toward disorder, essentially. And I like this entropy as a measure of unpredictability, which is, again, a whole separate dimension of reality that you normally don't think about, unless you study something like that. But it gave examples of the different amount of chaos, essentially. Low entropy would be something like ice, where it's kind of like a more stable structure, where to find all the, all the molecules there. Less order, such as water, which is higher entropy, and the highest entropy is gas, because gas can just go everywhere, and then suddenly these molecules are over there, and they're not part of this, So that's and stuff does move toward that, right? Because ice becomes water, water becomes gas, and then we have that. We'd established that in physics that entropy in a closed system always increases. So by default, there's some kind of property of reality where it makes everything destabilize essentially and just dissipate, I guess. So once things, change, they're not going back together. Ash doesn't become wood, eggs don't unscramble, and ink in water tends to disperse. That's just what happens when we measure that. So this living systems exist to push back against entropy. That's like the most fundamental definition of life, essentially. That's what life is. It's some kind of concerted process and effort to go against not being, against just not existing. It's almost like a fight with nothingness. And then they talked about this, how the brain survives, the free energy principle. And that's where they talked about this prediction machine, that it minimizes surprise. That's what its job is, essentially. It's trying to, I guess, measure some kind of reality. So it's looking at it for you, but what you get served as a conscious individual, it's just its prediction. So first, the brain predicts what will happen. Then it compares to predictions to incoming new data, new information. Then it adjusts the existing model, to reduce the surprise. And then that's the kind of stable version, the most survivable version of reality. And that makes sense, because if you're say if you're a human and you migrated to a new area in a forest or something, you don't know what's in there. But if you see oh, this is a new type of animal that I'm seeing, it gets plugged into your prediction algorithm. It's now in there by default, and it will be accounting for it. It will be looking out for that in the environment. So just even from that standpoint, it's that this brain, this cognition process is just a huge system that works, this prediction stuff works without your conscious awareness, because otherwise you'd be busy with that. You'd be standing there, okay, rendering, trying to fucking render the prediction, because but you don't have time for that, because reality, if you do that, some predator will snatch you up, and you don't have time for that. So it has to happen. The frame rate has to be so high enough that you have to live in physical reality. But this refresh of prediction, it's constantly happening, essentially.
Yeah, so because we did talk about memory. I think part of that is also that's the system by which we can remember is indexed, and therefore you can make better decisions. You can make a more informed decision next time because already indexed. You already know that part of the knowledge, so that you connect the new knowledge to form, the new knowledge that you have, which continuously updates. Because imagine. People who have a short, if they have short-term memory loss, for example, imagine waking up is don't even know who you are, don't even know what's going on. That takes a lot of time to get recognize everything.
Yeah,
and to beat.
And you're useless until you do that.
Yeah, so this is why our entire living condition is on the fact that we have a memory, on the fact that we have these predictable environment by which we can create, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't know what to do with yourself. You wouldn't know how to survive, right? So imagine the world exists as they are, but you as an individual, like you have to retain all of this to remember, okay, what I need to do, what you want to do, what you know, because otherwise nobody would even know what you need. You as a creature living in this world, you have to figure out, okay, I have these requirements, these living requirements, and I have to go out there and get the resources, get the things that I need, and all that, right? And that's a huge amount of processing that has to happen, and a lot of indexing too. Like I said, it has to be categorized, put into those mental boxes, so you can take that information out, process the data, and then update the system.
But the crazy part about this is that it's happening automatically. Because even if you take something like studying something specifically, maybe that would be different. But like before, knowledge was evolving much more organically, I would say, because there was just less of it, I think. Maybe it was like more cultural before, because seeing some of these medieval or fantasy themed type of stories and shows, it makes you realize how important before it was to like know the lore. Like if you lived in this kingdom, you'd be much better off if you knew stuff. If you knew all the lords, who is famous for what. That was in itself a form of a social skill, a currency, right? Because knowledge is power back then for sure. And just social fluency, and just big thing, and everything. Like it's a form of respect. If you meet like a lord and you are over some fact that you're like, oh, lord that is famous for this and this is automatically you are giving somebody a respect, which gives you like a social standing. So it's a huge thing to know. But that's just human world. That's just like local human lore, and you naturally can pick it up if you just live around. It's like, oh, who is this? This is the guy. Who is this? This is the guy. This is formally different from like if you wanted to study physics today. It's like there's a huge common backlog of knowledge. There's a knowledge system that you would need to catch up on, and that everybody who studies physics, they know it. So you'd have to spend a good chunk of your life trying to essentially install that knowledge. But let me see, where was I going with this? Yeah, with knowledge and how it plugs into the prediction and the fact that it's automatic. So it's automatic in a sense that it's happening throughout your daily life without you having to do anything about it. That's where like the general intelligence question comes in, because smarter people, they learn faster, which means they're able to recognize the patterns better. They just see like, okay, I see that he did that. And somehow they connect, like there's enough of a background process happening that they just make more connections to what everything is. Like,
Right.
oh, this person went in like that and they were hunchbacked, which means they were in that mood, which means that the interaction meant that, they're able to, at least that's what
It's
I
more
imagine
layers.
it's like. Yeah, but you're able to extract more information from everything, because if you think about it, everything has a lot of information, especially in the human world, right? That's why there are psychologists, and there are social skills, which there's emotional intelligence and stuff, which allows you to read people. And it's like, oh, I noticed his mood was a little bit off, which means, this and this. And you can use that information for all kinds of reasons, but you can be, compassionate, you could be empathetic, you could be more forgiving because of that, because that's something you noticed. You're like, oh, this person like is having a hard time, because this and this. So I'm gonna be more patient or something. So it's knowledge, it's awareness, it's pattern recognition, and it all plugs into your behavior and how you make judgments. And essentially, where I'm trying to go with this is, I do want to connect it to my current iteration of spirituality. Is to find or make a good manual for using the mind, because mind is it can definitely run it on its own, but then there's still some kind of interaction and relationship that you have with it. The fact that you can lie awake at night and have like racing thoughts, it means that you're not exactly in control, right? It means that there's some kind of other stuff going on, with which directly impacts you, but it's not it's not you exactly, and you're not in 100% control of it, which means there is some kind of relationship happening between some kind of conscious you and the rest of the hardware or software or components or systems, right?
Yeah, it's like it feels like our whole life we're just trying to wrestle control over this system,
Yeah.
because you are running on these programs that are just automatic. And I think either conscious or not, like either we're doing this consciously or not, we're trying to assert dominance, in the idea that we try to convince ourselves that we are in control, that I am this. And this is what the ego is doing, right? The idea that, oh, I have this stable identity and I know who I am,
I know who I am.
yeah. I'm just a dude playing another dude disguised as another dude, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you trying to convince yourself because that is the safe option. That is the kind of thing that like, that's nice, right? I
But
mean,
like, why would that be happening? I
because
mean,
because everything else is scary. Everything else is unknown.
why?
Is not known. It's just something you can't predict. Something you can't get a handle on. You don't know how is it gonna react or whatever, right? It's so people like we showed in the infographic, right, saying that yeah, people the world is chaotic, but the living systems are trying to make predictions.
Yeah, well, that was that biggest point in the second part, which I didn't get to mention yet, that the ego is part of this prediction process. It creates a stable sense of I to survive.
Right.
So the it's just like a type of software that runs along this
Yeah.
prediction process, but to take ownership of the survival. But to me, it's the same thing as there is still this unit. There's a biological unit, at least, right? Which whose survival is the same thing as survival of you. So I don't see the point of splitting these hairs. Like ego is part of this process. I don't really care, It's I'm definitely in there, If this
Wow.
body
The
is
ego.
killed, I'm
Well,
gonna be gone.
the ego doesn't care that you don't care. It's still gonna do what it's
But
programmed to do.
But what is it then? So it creates a stable sense of I. What is this sense of I? And so there's you see, like we're multiplying too many components which are not self-evident to me. So I now understand there's a brain. There's a brain inside the head, and it does the prediction, and it does it automatically. It's part of the thing that runs. What is the ego? Where does that come from? What is the sense? Like, why does the sense come in? Like, why do all these things happen?
So that you can
I guess this is where this next part is. I guess let's finish this part. So reality is a controlled hallucination. We don't perceive reality directly. We perceive the brain's best guess. Yeah, that makes sense. So the brain has this internal model, and sent through the senses we get limited data from the world, which is essentially, as far as we can tell, is enormous, is infinite, right? There's definitely much more information out there than we can process, because for us to process the full world, we'd have to render the whole world in the brain internal model, which is just impossible because it's that much. It's essentially infinite information.
Exactly.
And it can't be rendered infinitely, because that would mean everything would have to be rendered at the same time. But that is never possible because the reality
you don't have the
is always
processing
expanding.
power to do it. Yeah.
But it's always expanding. That's also the case, right? That's because we know the space is expanding. Okay, so.
But the fact that we can even see as much that we do see, that's already kind of amazing how much it can process. And now I know that it still is counting as a hallucination in the idea that it's constructed, but still, that seems like, what we feel like, oh, reality seems nice, or, whatever. That's all the processing, right? But yeah, it's predicted. But what I'm trying to say here is, okay, I feel like that part of the ego, the I, is symptomatic of this whole process of trying to predict. Because it's like, okay, it's creating borders, basically. It's creating border, I know this, versus what's out there. Because that way, is easy for us to process and understand the world. Because otherwise, how can you understand anything when you don't divide them up into different recognizable parts? Because everything, I just say, everything is atom, everything is in different.
But there's no breaking anything down. Like it's just what is. I am a separate biological unit, and I'm perceiving. I have senses that are coming out from here, from me, and they're perceiving the world, and it's coming into the senses, and that's just what you see. So that's naturally what is. Nothing is constructing anything. That's the part like I don't agree with. Like there's a biological unit. It's separate. It's an external environment. We're just separate, and it has a bunch of these objects. So this, what am I having a problem with? Like
what's the issue you have with this?
At what point in this reality that you just described is the ego appearing? So again, ego is part of the process, creates a stable sense of I to survive. It creates a stable sense of. So okay, I think that's just a structural functional description of that happening somewhere there underneath the hood. Maybe, but like I don't care. I don't care in terms of my experience. It's like saying there's a whole chocolate cake factory inside of your head that makes chocolate cake, and that's why you have this experience.
I mean,
fine,
it is a way to describe. Yeah, it's a way for us to describe, like, because what is the ego? Like that, it's just a word that we use.
But yeah, but to me, it doesn't exist. I'm not aware of it. There is no sense of I. There's just experience.
Well, you still experience it though, even though you can train yourself not to.
In what way do you experience?
Because if you say that you truly don't experience it, we will not be having this conversation because you won't know who you are, what you are, or anything. You will just be like staring at staring at nothing. Like you don't even understand what's going on.
That's memory. Memory is what happened to this biological unit.
You know, when people suffer stroke, right? That half of the brain turns off and they just literally cannot process anything because that part of the brain, that controls, I guess, the ego, or sort of the idea that you have this, that part of the brain turns off and you literally just don't recognize anything. You don't recognize numbers. You don't recognize objects. You don't recognize anything. And that's literally the raw input, right? It's like the raw input of what you experiencing. That is the real experiencing. But as a human being, it does not make sense at all. But
I see what you mean. Good point. Yes. So like that's the existence of that structure becomes noticeable when it disintegrates, and when it's not functioning properly, which we can observe at least in other humans when stuff goes wrong like that. Okay, yeah, so I understand that part. That's something that's been noticed and that it's been given name. It's like that's what seems to be happening based on what we've been able to observe to what happens in the brain. If there's an injury, this happens. Okay,
it's the description. Yeah, it's the description of this sense of self, quote unquote.
Yeah, it's just to me, like I think what I'm struggling with reconciling is that it seems like there is both hardware processes going on, right? And software processes going on, which is software moves into the realm of consciousness, essentially, because we don't know how that final part of constructing the experience happens. That's why I'm having difficulty, because in that regard, it's still so abstract. But I think that I'm getting it better now. There is some kind of process that's constructing it, and this ego is just part of that process.
Yeah, it's like for some reason we create this, if you can even say this, illusion of ego, right? The illusion of self, the illusion of all this.
But it is illusion in what sense?
That you have this
yes, I can see that it can go away, right? You can get injured, the process can be interrupted, and then you're no longer there, what you call you. But what makes it an illusion? It's an illusion in the sense that it's not permanent, or it's not really there. Like it's still a thing.
Or is the idea that, I think just by saying it is an illusion that there is no self, it's just that if you take the view that we are part of everything and everything is part of us, then yeah, we're all made of atoms, we're all made of this. Like you can have specific structures like the brain and stuff like that, and then you as an organism, you do your thing, but we are part of the world. Basically, that's you almost have to take a cosmological view of that. So you have to have a, I guess, priori conception of like cosmology almost. Like imagine you got to describe a story, but you kind of create the backstory. This is almost like, okay, you almost
Mm.
have to agree the fact that we are everything, everything is us. And in that model, the ego is an illusion because you are part of everything else. But you somehow, this ego make you think that you are separate from everything else, right? Like, which is
But I mean,
functionally how,
functionally it is so.
yeah, you recognize I'm not the cup, I'm
Yeah.
different, I'm this, I'm whatever. But we are the same as the cup. We're all just atoms and molecules and whatever, right? So the distinction only comes into recognizing the differences, I guess, but that has its own utility, right? The reason why you would recognize yourself as separate from everything else is because what you need to operate as an individual, as a,
But then kind of like you would be insane to say that you're atoms.
well, yeah, but that is the more that we discover about these things, the more it's like we try to we try to describe everything, right? Because imagine ancient people don't have any conception of this. It's like, well, life is life. Is you just you live your life and you do what you do. But they don't. I mean, imagine before knowing we're made of atoms, people think all kind of reasons why
Right.
we exist or how we exist or what's the fundamental reality, right?
Well, the thing is, like, yeah, the more I think about it, it's very interesting that really there could be any kind of human society in terms of like beliefs.
Yeah.
You could do anything.
You can do,
It's
yeah.
theoretically
You
possible.
you
You
can
could,
convince yourself like some crazy backstory for how
yeah,
everything is
but
the way it
but
is.
the fact that you would, this is the power of that software and culture, is that you would still have a way to exist, and it will be very different from like, say, a modern city society. You could have a completely different society with completely different rules, views, and stuff that they accept as fact, right? Like, yeah, they would not even deal with the same type of concepts, and they would still exist. They would still be humans, but well, that makes it very strange. Where we're definitely living in some kind of mm,
It's all social because we're
the reality
constructing
is very social and
we
socially
are
constructed, right?
yeah, we're constructing that reality for ourselves from the culture of what you understand, the rules, the customs, and everything else, right? And you cannot develop without that because you are being informed from a young age by your parents, by your culture of how to do things, what to do, and even as you grow up and learn different stuff, you're trying to turn the new knowledge you have and somehow make it kind of conform, right? Make it work with what you know, right? So imagine if you're being raised as a flat earther, right? If your parents just totally believe in flat earth and they've been teaching you that and all that, you grow up, you're like, yeah, flat earth is the way it is. These people are crazy for saying the earth is round. But how do you right, but the more knowledge you get, it's like, well, imagine if that person got on the rocket and actually launched into space and then seeing that everything is round. Either they change their mind or they trying to formulate another, this is a lie. This is a conspiracy. You're showing me, you're drugging me or whatever and showing me this round earth thing. But it's like, so, like, yeah, they, as a human being, they will still breathe and they will still exist as long as they get sustenance. But your belief system can be in many different ways. You could think whatever, and that could be your life. But so meaning that you're being influenced from the beginning, or led astray, if you will, as well. That you're being led a certain way. You're being led to believe things in a certain way, right? And the more you discover, the more you can correct that information however you like, right? Or you try to find a model
Well,
that
that's
fits
that's what for
your
me was
worldview.
the enticing part of the, I guess, spiritual exploration, is that maybe there is some kind of innate, what do you call that, skepticism in me
Mm.
that is just suspicious
Right.
of just everything. Because the like at some point, like I started having these thoughts like something's fucky
Yeah,
around here.
something is not
Like
fitting, right?
something's very strange. Yeah, it's about the whole thing. So I don't know what it is. That could be, it could be so many things,
Well,
right?
you see, that's the part of the problem of the paradox, I guess, because there is that the story of that mathematician Gödel who's the best friend of Albert Einstein, and he's the one that was like going through math, and he's finding loopholes everywhere in
Hmm.
math. Which other mathematician think that we already found the perfect mathematic solutions and theorems or whatever, and he just go in there and just poking holes like, this is not right. This is a
So
loophole right
literally
here.
like noticing, yeah.
Yeah, so he even poke hole at Einstein's theories, and there are certain things, and they realize now we have to account for this because he's
Hmm.
right. This is not computing with it. So he's
Well,
finding
yeah, that's
all
what
these
I'm
problems. So
saying. It's
meaning,
like anytime you review something, you like, well, what about this though? You
yeah.
just notice something else.
So Gödel's theorem, I think, is just like he found that there is no completeness. Everything
Hmm.
is incomplete. There's always in any given system, there's always going to be something that's not described or not explained, I
Not
guess.
defined,
So
essentially.
that's what he found out essentially in a mathematical kind of systematic way that he actually go through the math, right? It's not just him saying, "Oh, not something doesn't fit." He actually found that yes, by going through the rule of mathematics, he found the loophole. Like this is not right. This is not explainable, and it's not as everybody else thought that this is going to be a perfect system of describing the nature of reality. So there's always something. So meaning that either our cognition is limited in a way that we can't comprehend these things, or there is an actual thing in reality where it's never somehow explained or quantified or whatever, right? Maybe we could call that the mystery of life or whatever, right? It's just something
To
about
me,
the
it's kind
world.
of a sign of it's essentially a proof that mm, reality is infinite and we're participating in constructing it
Yeah,
because
that could very well be.
it's what it seems like, right? That incompleteness theorem, that kind of, it's almost like just imagine you are building something, you're building like a little house or something, and then it is incomplete. You're just like, okay, there's more space here. What are we gonna do here? Oh, we're gonna do a cupboard. And you do another inspection. It's like, oh, what about these little pipes here? Oh, yeah, they need. It's infinite, right?
It's like how many cardboard is too much cardboard, right? Like, can
Yeah,
you figure out what the actual number is? How many numbers of cupboards is too much? Like, if
yeah.
you get to,
Because if you ask a woman, it's gonna be not enough, and that's never enough. There isn't ever a house that a woman goes to like, yeah, this is perfect.
but there gotta be a
It's
number.
work in
I
progress.
need to know a number, okay? A specific number that one more beyond this number, it means technically and
No,
ontologically too much.
no, because we change our mind too. That's
You
the crazy
see?
part.
Yeah. So there is that system by which you cannot be quantified in a closed system, right? It's like in a closed, there's always something about it where it doesn't fit the entire,
Well, yeah, that's
picture
what
that we
this
want to do.
third point is about, essentially, at the bottom here. The perception is prediction plus correlation. And the consciousness lives between these two extremes, essentially, of too much order and too much chaos. So somehow both are detrimental. There is too much order, and I guess reality becomes rigid and inflexible, and that can cause depression, stagnation, narrow thinking. Too much chaos is disintegration, where just you go to psychosis, overwhelming confusion. Also can't operate there. So the sweet spot is this critical balance. And this talks about healthy systems operating at criticality. So that's not even talking about like, human mind or anything. It's just, it seems like any kind of dynamic system needs to stay dynamic, where it exchanges this, you stabilized, you get a little bit of more new stuff. You incorporate that and you're good to go and you get more. It's almost like you are supposed to be in this living dynamic process of um, get with the times, and like stabilize it, incorporate it, and always update the system, always update the prediction, because reality is never static. So
So
this is, yeah.
one could say that perhaps any mental illnesses are just the result of maybe you just somehow you couldn't make any predictions, or like the prediction, it's not working, right? You somehow, the system got disrupted, and therefore, when we say somebody is crazy, meaning what? You're not doing anything predictable. You're doing things which maybe to their mind it makes sense. But for other people, they're like, no, this is not something that you do in a situation that is in a social setting, right? In a social, like in a normal case, you would recognize that this is not acceptable behavior. But if that person still does it, then either they're not thinking or they're, because that means you're not taking into consideration the prediction that's already given, which is the social mores or social setting
Yeah.
rules, etiquettes and stuff, right? So I don't know. Maybe that's what it is, right? Because we're all hallucinating, and maybe if
Yeah,
you,
it's part of it, but it's almost like you can put these things to an extreme to imagine them and their effects. Like too much chaos will be essentially like imagine being dropped off on an alien planet with just alien life, yeah, and you
right,
know nothing there.
yeah.
You know nothing. You
So
were like
none of your prediction system is gonna
yeah,
work because
like
you're,
everything you know does not apply there. Essentially, different planet, different gravity, different air, different life forms, different food, etc. It would be alien in all sense of the word. That would be too much chaos from just an informational standpoint for your mind, because I mean it would require some kind of, I don't know how to even describe that type of system, but it would need to be resilient in a sense. It would need to be like robust, where it was like, oh, okay, looks like I'm on alien planet. Let's see what's going on. It would have to be some kind of a. It would to not freak out ultimately, because that's like the most extreme example I can think of, and most people would they would crumble right in
yeah.
that type of situation.
I mean, this is what happens in the closest one that we can describe on Earth will be war. Imagine going to war, like the unpredictable nature of that, right? I mean, it's predictable and unpredictable. I mean, it's just different factors going into that specific scenario where if you are a soldier on the ground, like you just don't know anything, right? If without
Right.
any communication system that kind of relay that information, you're just literally blind. And going in there, who knows where the enemy is, right? So in that environment, yeah, you can be that fight or fight response is gonna kick in, just like the ancestor had, right? Where, in the jungle, like who knows where the tiger is? I mean, you just got to be alert all the time. So that's a very stressful situation, and that's what people try not to get into, right? You
Yeah.
want to have predictable environment so that you can, oh, everything is cool. I can, like what modern life
Yeah, and
is.
unpredictability has some definitely connected with fear, right? We dislike it because essentially it's unknown. It's like you don't know what's going to happen. Now it's stressful just by that alone.
Yeah.
Mm,
Which is why,
predictability.
things like darkness, we are afraid of darkness, right?
Hmm.
No matter who you are or how, even you can say, oh, I got accustomed to the dark. You still feel it like innate, right? Like the fear in your body respond to that. It's just the fact that it's just pitch black. There's nothing you can see. I mean, dude, you can imagine all kinds of things in that scenario, even though perhaps the real environment doesn't have anything. Maybe there's nothing there, but you are imagining it, right? So that's why the hallucination. I mean, I don't know, right? Some people believe in ghosts. Some people believe, oh, that they're spirits or whatever. Maybe that's just the people hallucinating it. I don't know, right? It's but the fact that I think I can say like I do agree the fact that yeah, almost on a technical level, we are hallucinating everything that we see, right? Is constructed, predicted for us. And in that way, it kind of raises a question of like, again, who's in control, right? Ultimately, it feels like we are not in control at all. These things are being like, that there's a scientific research I believe we read before that somehow your brain make the decision way before you do.
Hmm.
So whatever decision you made, the signal was already sent before you
Yeah,
recognize
yeah,
that you made the decision.
yeah. So it plugs into this prediction process, but that part takes it further to the point where even your decision making is plugged into that prediction process, that automatic process, which is the part that stresses me out the most, because it makes it seem as if this is just a movie running that you're just watching. Because
Yeah.
I've heard that, like, it's literally a spiritual perspective that I've heard, like, living
Truman Show.
masters and gurus talk about like that. But this is the insane part. This is what messes with my mind, that there's actual real humans who believe that to be a true case, like that this is what they think reality is, which is I mean, what if that was the case? Okay, what do you think What do you think about that? If that's how it was, like, there's not even anything left for anybody to do if that's the case.
But movie for who though? Or this is made for God?
It
He's
doesn't
just
matter.
watching this for entertainment?
What does it matter? It's like it's not. It doesn't seem like you would be able to change anything, or if there's any you to do anything about anything. There just seems to be a movie that's playing out, and that's it.
But when saying movie, it implies that it's a production being made for a purpose, right? Like
Yeah,
in human terms, made
yeah, yeah,
to entertain other people, right? We create stories. So
yeah.
maybe this is maybe God's want to entertain himself, and He created
Well,
all of
that's the
us for
thing.
the
Maybe
movie.
this, maybe that.
Yeah.
But the fact that essentially it takes out any type of control or decision or planning or worries or responsibility, it takes all of that away, as that doesn't exist, because none of that exists anymore. If a movie is being cast, it's like watching a movie on a screen, right? It's already shot in human world. There's nothing for you to do. There's not. You can be angry, you can be upset, but
Yeah.
there's nothing that's going to change how the movie unfolds.
Well, you can change it in some aspects. In some aspect of how it unfolds, it's like the story. You can change it, right? You can change the storyline for yourself because you can decide to do different things, and that changes how the story will unfold.
Yeah, but
And
we've been through
ultimately,
this
no.
process of
But
following how that process arises, right? If all the decisions rely on something else that's been pre-decided for you, then you never get any choice in anything, because all the choices just cascade naturally, like a little logical
yeah,
expression unfolding,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
2 + 2 is 4 no matter what. And if you've been given 2 and 2, that's it. That's all you have. You can only
Right.
put them together. But that's what I'm saying. It seems like we've been given everything. We've been given 2 and the sign plus and the sign 2. What are you going to do? What is there to do with that if that's what you were given, you know? And it's not like there are any options.
But you underestimated the power of human creativity because some people are just like, no, 2 + 2 equals whatever I decide. There are some people who can
Like
just
that guy.
decide for themselves
What was
whatever.
his name? That black actor who's gone full mental. You know what I'm talking about?
An actor,
Yeah. Hold on.
mental, who went mental?
Uh,
A lot of us went mental. I mean,
let me see. How
you
do I
gotta
find
define.
this?
You gotta
Terrence
define.
Howard. Okay, right away. Terrence
He
Howard.
did? I didn't. Okay, I know.
No,
Yeah, yeah.
you've
That's the
seen
guy.
this. Terrence Howard thinks 1 × 1 = 2, has a secret system called teriology, and spends 17 hours a day making nameless plastic structures. So this is a little tangent, but it's fascinating because this is a real person. He was a famous actor, and then he started going on shows and podcasts and saying just stuff that sounds like nonsense, but with like a lot of technical terms. And he's very passionate, very, lucid, very like cognizant, very there. But he's saying like, no, our whole math is wrong because 1 × 1 = 2, because the harmonic structures of the elements in the key minor, he just says a bunch of words that they don't really mean anything. So, and I think some people got curious enough where they got him in a room with like mathematicians and scientists. And yeah, it doesn't seem like he's tracking. Like he doesn't have anything. But the fact that he's got so far and he's garnered so much attention, it is the mind-boggling stuff. I assume it's only because he's been a celebrity in the first place. But from what I understand, he doesn't make any sense.
He receives some message.
Yeah.
Right? Received from the heavens.
Yeah, let me see. What is the stuff that he's saying? This is some quotes from his in the interview to Rolling Stone, I think. I was always wondering, why does a bubble take the shape of a ball? Why not a triangle or a square? I figured it out. If Pythagoras was here to see it, he would lose his mind. Einstein too. Tesla, This is the last century that our children will have to be taught that 1 × 1 is 1.
Whoa.
This sounds like a manic type of episode from a person with several things going on. but one of them is definitely like something like schizophasia, where I don't think he understands what some of these words even mean. How can it equal 1? If 1 times equal 1, that means that 2 is of no value because 1 times itself has no effect. See, that doesn't make any sense. What does that mean?
Hey, he receives some divine,
But this is like, I think people are so intrigued by this because he just makes it seem, but maybe that's because he's that much good of an actor. He just makes it seem like he says it with enough confidence where it seems like he figured something out. He knows something. Oh, this guy figured out the new math. 1 times 1 equals 2 because the square root of 4 is 2. What? So what's the square root of 2? Should be 1, but we're told it's 2, and that cannot be. None of that is fucking correct. What are you talking about? Wait, hold on. The square root of 4 is 2. That's correct. But the square root of 2 is... Wait, what is the square root of 2? Is this how we find out?
This is how you find out, right? It's FAFO, man.
Square root of 2? No, wait. How do you do it? Square root. Yeah, it's 1.41. It's not 2. So he doesn't even know what he's talking about.
Are you sure you got the correct answer, bro?
Well, no, because that's what the calculator is telling me. And it's the big calculator conspiracy thing. That's what they want us to think.
That's right.
They want us to think that the square root of 2 is 1.4142135623730095. Just, they think we're that stupid.
So Howard is the prophet, okay? He will bring us the truth. And we refuse to listen.
So if... This is what we're gonna do on this show, which is gonna entertain every freaking loony bin. So theory. Hold on, no. But let's spend 9 hours trying to confirm exactly what's being said.
You can't.
This guy has been spending 17 hours a day creating nameless plastic structures. Okay, that's important.
You see, there are better things that we could do with our life like that, he's doing it right.
So 1 times 1 is 2 because like this is the part I like about it is that it's like exercise in creativity. Like you could make anything stick if you like are convincing enough. Yeah. This is the part I think that's fascinating to me.
That's the part.
And other people about it, because you could be like, he's gone on Joe Rogan. He talked to Joe Rogan, trying to convince him that 1 times 1 is. And people were like saying like, well, this is like literally like some kind of exploitation of mental illness, because like, what else could it be, right? But yeah, but essentially, yeah, this guy is.
But but that's the problem that we have is like, we don't know what's mad, right? What is exactly how we defined, right? Like all the things that we define as say quote unquote normal, it's just the social convention, right? That's the uncomfortable truth of it, is that yes, we can think these people are lunatics, and maybe really. They are, but
that's what we do. It's like 1, 2, together, 2, 1 and 1, 2, 1 set of 1, also 2, but that's what is. That's what counting is.
Yeah.
There's no magic. There's nothing happening here.
Well, I'm saying, yeah, in that case, sure, it's just crazy, right? But I'm just saying, as what we have, or as what we are discussing here, right? If we agree that everything we know is hallucinated as a fundamental reality of how the brain works,
well, then math would be hallucinated and everything else.
Right. But yes, those fundamental logical things, it makes sense because it's as far as we're concerned, is reality, right? You're counting the real, because this is why we have math. It does describe the physics, the world, and everything. This is why we can build bridges and whatever. Because if it's false, if those mathematics were false, then we can't even do these things because there's no rule then, right? So I'm not arguing that anything you imagine is the truth. No, like there's definitely something more truthful than others. But the reality, the situation, and the uncomfortable part is that, well, you're never, first of all, you're never in control. And second of all, some of these things are kind of constructed for you by the brain. And it is a good prediction system. So it does give you, you can recognize and cognize these facts, mathematics, physics, whatever, these things, you can learn them and you can really integrate that into your, and you will be a smart person, you'll be an intelligent person, you will you'll be able to do a lot of things with it. But fundamentally, our view of reality is still constructed, it's still a version, and so that's kind of leaves a wide open space. This is why different people have different interpretations, and this is why we can't convince everybody, because like, yeah, sure, some fundamental rule of reality, sure, we can describe, but there are still a lot of questions. There's still something unresolved, and we can't convince everybody. And people can have all kinds of ideas about what they think is how things are, right? I mean, we were having this discussion, but what do we know, right? I mean, all these can't just be conjectures. Who's to say that if they are real? Because people are arguing over this for thousands of years. Right? What's real? What's the what you're supposed to believe? How you're supposed to what structure is reality, or how you're supposed to construct your view of reality, right? We can only find these fundamental. You can see this from what we talk about, right? These structures of evolution, different models of how society exists, but there is that evolution. We start evolving and we use our intelligence to figure out, okay, this is not working, this is working. And we're to our modern day, we certainly have advanced far enough that we have made improvement to a lot of things, but fundamentally, we're still trying to figure out, okay, what's the best way to quantify, to deal with all these, with the true nature of unpredictable nature. The fact that nature is unpredictable, right? There are different, you can even say that we've been plagued by unpredictability, right? Our ancestors have tried to build systems and build things, structures to kind of make sure that we basically still survive, right? By having having better system of prediction so that we can master our environment, right? And that's the first sign of intelligence, right? To master your environment. And we're the only, I guess you can say, we're the only one who have gone to a stage where, yeah, we're literally changing the face of the earth. We're changing our environment in ways other organisms and animals do not. For good or bad, we're changing it. We're constantly changing the way that we live, how things are structured, and different things by using our intelligence, right? We recognized all of these things and we figured out, okay, how do we do these things? What does it mean for my own? How do I live? Right? What job do I do? Whatever. So we formulate a whole system here where we divided up the jobs, we divided up the task, and then this is the modern day life, for good or for bad. But these are the structures by which we think, oh, maybe this is how we gonna build anything. Because see, we have all these infrastructures, right? The road, schools, hospitals, police stations, and all this stuff. There are system upon systems that are built to maintain order out of chaos, right? So everybody expending energy doing that. Every single day, you're trying to do something. You try to, move things around, shuffle things here and there. We're trying to satisfy the basic function that we have, right? Which is to survive. And we kind of abstracted that to these, basically to tasks, jobs, corporations, and things like that, right? So it's becoming more artificial. But with the size of the population that we have, this is the solution that humanity have. We don't have anything better so far, right? We have all these things we created because with this amount of people, this is kind of sort of what it requires, So I just think that it's getting more crazier because there's more information, right? There's more information that exists than ever. And now we're just trying to figure it out. How do we quantify everything given the fact that now we have all of this information that we had to process. And in terms of economy, if you will, in terms of people's well-being, well, now the case has always been that people found out that you profit by having the maximum access to information. Because with the advent of, say, for example, the stock market, the stock market, for example, is just finding the price that's the realest information at a particular second, right? Because before, you used to have this time delay between the information between two stock exchanges or whatever. And some people actually made a killing by arbitrage, right? So in the modern manifestation of this is that information are being improved so we can have ready access of information right in the instant. That way, nobody can exploit the arbitrage, but there's always going to be asymmetrical information, right? So people are trying to do that, to exploit that, right? And you can think of this as also in the realm of politics, where different nations, they have different access to information. In the case of, say, for example, North Korea, they restrict information so much. So yeah, they control the access of information. So they have maintained control in that way. But when you have an open system, like say, for example, like the Canada, US, where information are free flowing, then you can't control that information, meaning that you have to find other ways to influence people. And in the modern day, everybody is chasing after that. Who can get that knowledge first? Because if you have the information before your opponent, then you win, right? Whether that's in war, whether that's in, corporate competition or, whatever else. So in the modern day, we're just more and more trying to compete on that informational edge, right? Who gets to know first? Who can process the information first? This is why AI is, it does all this processing for us. And then people are trying to, just basically an arm race, are trying to who can do that better, right? So what it does is that, now in a way, the caveat with this is like we're basically outsourcing our own intelligence, letting machine to kind of get all the information for us. So a lot of times, we do see the problem with social media, for example, is like we start thinking less because information are given to us, right? So now our quandary is again, informational hygiene is how do we process all the information now that it's coming at us like this, right? And which is why more and more it is pertinent to think about these fundamental questions which we used to ask ourselves, or what our ancestors asked themselves.
Yeah, it still goes back to basics, right? This is why like this podcast is like taking a form of like we're kind of almost starting from the ground up each time, because we are almost like going through these models one by one to see and understand what out of it is accurate, useful, etc. But yeah, the challenge with today's and age, just to touch on what you said, is both the quantity and the quality of information, but still even more baseline than that is that just what kind of information do you need and what do you need it for, right? We've went over this before, that you gotta curate both your experience and the information you engage with and consume. Well, it's more important than ever. And my current stance on it, like I think I solidified it a while back, that you do need to monitor and restrict what you consume on an informational basis. So how I tried to develop a couple accounts on Twitter, on X, and it's not really going anywhere because like I guess I don't know how this thing works. But anytime I'm on there, and when I registered the accounts, like I selected the specific accounts I want to follow, right? So I only want this, and I selected some, like for one account I selected like philosophers, some writers I follow, etc. But somehow this piece of trash that is Twitter, every time I go on there, I see some stupid garbage that is really good at grabbing my attention, and like I'm not going on there for browse. I'm just going there to post something. But every time I notice, like just because I landed on the page, before I even have to post anything, I see some stupid shit, and it's like I'm like really tempted to engage with it. And if I'm not watching it, it will like Okay, let's see what the comments say. Oh yeah, it's so stupid. But that itself is the algorithm with which
Yeah.
it's trying to essentially rope you in. It and to the it to the point where like I really hate it. Like I hate the whole freaking thing because it's that much of a trash freaking thing.
Yeah.
So I don't even want to go on there, just because of that. Because it's some kind of I don't think there are any real humans on there either. Because it's
Yeah.
all
It's all
like
bots.
it's all looks play bots. So I'm like,
Yeah.
what the hell is this? Who is this even for? Who is going on here and leaving these comments like, oh yeah, it's so stupid? Like what the hell? What? But if you actually get roped in there and engage with this stuff, that's gonna be a dumpster in your head. That's gonna
Yeah.
be what you're gonna be dealing with. And I just noticed it's exceptionally good. It's trying to get you and say, yeah, just do this. Just go onto this website. And it's like, oh, they're so stupid. Oh, this guy's freaking stupid. And it's just sitting there like, no. Because that's what I assume is, and there is some kind of mechanism that's definitely like wants that in some level, but it's so stupid.
It's
Like, why would you willingly engage in that? Why would you want to have anything to do with that? This whole process seems idiotic because nothing is happening. You're just wasting your time.
Yep. That's the new economy, right? Just wasting your attention, right?
But
They want
the
to grab the
question
attention.
becomes like, what is the real game, right? Who is doing this for? What is it doing for? Like, it's one thing that I noticed it. Okay, there are people who don't notice it. There's another thing, and then there's like I'm in between because like I'm noticing then that and then I'm noticing that I'm noticing, etc. Right? So I'm actually having some kind of gap to think about it. But I'm sure lots of stuff like this is happening to everybody on a daily basis where you're not noticing nothing like that. But it is a fact that somebody's doing this on purpose. Somebody's doing it for some kind of purpose. So
Yeah.
that's my question is what is the real purpose? Because that makes me think about all kinds of conspiracies, right? That means that there is some kind of entities out there who are dedicating a huge amount of resources and plan this stuff out and actually design it. Like, okay, this platform is going to have this criteria. We're going to post the most stupid shit ever. We're going to post the inflammatory comments. We're going to add AI to it so it can make ridiculous images. And the whole thing is just one big parade.
Because it's
But
already being used. These access to information, right? And they kind of weaponize the information, right? Like they would.
I mean, one of it is definitely the fact is like it's very difficult to find real information that you can rely on and find real information you can rely on that's not just somebody else's opinion and agenda, and then we'll go through all of that. But to bring it back to what we're talking about, it means that you have to find and make yourself like reliable sources, which is extremely difficult. Like for the most part, for me, it would be just a handful of writers and philosophers and some spiritual gurus who I've already studied and checked out because like I know what their ideas are, I know what they're saying, but even then, the reason I would be consuming information from them, it's almost like it's the better option out of everything out there, because your options are what? Stupid, mindless entertainment, right? Of which there are also many gradations and many different qualities. Then actually studying something in a concentrated fashion, which is, you could go and learn programming online right now. There's no problem. You can do it yourself. You don't need nobody. So learning skills, which is work, or third option, which is what I think I'm doing, is kind of like almost like comfort food, where it's not detrimental. It's still like complex information for me to digest, but ultimately, like the most to do is like the most it does is maybe give me some ideas for new hobbies or healthy habits. That's why I'm trying to consciously keep it, because at least that I know will not like actively harm me, But as it turns out, like when it's adjacent to the spiritual topic, it's not exactly safe either. So, but like, what are your options? Your options is what? The other option is like full informational vacuum. That's not going to work either.
Yeah.
It's going to be strange and challenging,
I
Although
mean,
there's definitely some peace there, but there's still something in the mind that goes like, well, I need something. I need some kind of something. I don't know, man.
I mean, yeah, either you decide to go live in the woods and just accept that as the natural state of things and
Yeah,
being able to find a way to be able to deal with your boredom and everything and all the hard work you have to do to
yeah,
survive, or you have to stick with the rest of this clown show, right?
yeah.
Which is what
So
it is. But
it's almost like, I mean, yeah, we're going on tangents upon tangents at this point, but that seems to be, it's like the question is still is like a dichotomy. Whether you go, I'm deciding that I am content with what I have right now versus, but what if there's more, right? It still goes back to that.
yeah,
And it's still,
because we doing that every single day, right? You wake
yeah,
up, you decide on a macro level, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna be satisfied enough with the current status quo, or do I want more? Every single day you're doing that because if you answer, well, I'm content. Well, what do you mean by content? Content is in what? Doing nothing or just keep doing what's already happening? But
yeah,
even
that's,
then, things are still happening, right? You're still making things happen.
yeah, you're still going to do something.
Yeah. So what do you decide, or how much of confidence, ambition go into that, or how much is there something you want to do? Okay, what does that mean to you? And if you do achieve your goal, what does that mean? Right. So yeah, constantly just fighting yourself. How much willpower you have? What do you really want? And say if you do get the result that you want, what does that? Yeah, because you wouldn't know because that's the future in which it hasn't happened yet. So it's almost like you imagine it to be some way, but the actual result or actual how you will feel would be very different. It's like, yeah, it's like rehearsing for, like in acting. Rehearsal is rehearsal, but the actual real show is a real show. It's different. It's not the same, right? It's different when you have the audience there than rehearsing the lines. So
I
there
think
is
I just
no,
heard, oh, wait, yeah, this one. The Joseph Campbell spent 5 years in a rented shack with no job, reading 9 hours a day. No income, no plan, or any publication deal. He later called it the most fertile period of my life. The hero's journey was written by a man who spent 5 years doing nothing the world would call productive. And I think that there's something there, like,
yeah.
because, but it also it's a unique combination of things. But I also I find myself to be of the opinion that you do need some breathing room. Like if you were to do some proper thinking, you cannot be rushed.
No, won't work.
And as life shows, yeah, sometimes it takes years because things need to properly digested, filtered and understood, etc. And I mean, reading now 9 hours a day, that's a lot of information processing. Yeah.
Maybe,
Yeah. So if anything, just do that.
yeah, that's a
Just
better
read.
result. That's a better result than doom scrolling,
Yeah,
doing all
the
the
whole
random bullshit.
the internet, the social media is very strange because even the like accounts that I specifically like selected, say on sites like Medium and Substack because I'm on there. Like I selected some specific accounts, right? So sometimes I browse them, I look through them. I was like, okay, what is this? What are they writing for? And some of it is inspirational, some of that is interesting, some of that is creative. But so often, I do find myself like, well, there already are so many successful, established writers and books throughout history that to just read some random stuff on the internet, which could have been written by AI at this point,
Hmm.
it essentially makes no sense. Like, why would I do that? It's on the off chance that I find some kind of gem versus just go on Goodreads and find me the best 5,000 books that I could read in a lifetime and I'll never even finish those. So it kind of defeats the purpose of using those sites even because it's not that good. It's not going to be that good because the other stuff has already been selected by time. It's already won. So I would rather read like books
Yeah.
because those are completed works of thought that's already been time tested and been crafted. So even this, like, I understand that
It
everybody's on a different journey of development, but I don't see the point compared to books.
Yeah, it's because I mean it's part of the problem of the modern economy, right? With everything so intertwined with the internet now, all these things are profit. There are profit margins in all
Yeah, and
this. That's
everybody's
all
trying
what
to
it is.
spin their blog and it's like read my blog, and some of these people even have like thousands of followers, which I have no idea how this works, because there isn't even an objective way to say like, oh, this writing is better than others. Some of the accounts I see, they're writing some nothing good, nothing original, nothing. They're just like something they found inspirational, like I wanted to share, which is
Mhm.
as valid as any reason. But like, is that the reason that they get a following? It's also arbitrary, and there is some kind of social aspect at the core of it all. There is such a thing as hype. You know, because I refuse to believe that they will like everybody's so attentive that they're like studies everybody's work when they follow them. It's like, oh, this is a cool post. The title looks cool. I'll give it a like. That's pretty much how it works. Most people don't even engage fully with these ideas and thoughts.
Yeah, which is the quandary because you think about, well, that's what's going on in the media space, right? I mean,
Essentially, it's the shallowness I think that I'm having trouble with.
yeah, I mean, it feels weird because in a way we are participating in that as well in our own, you know,
Yes,
in our own ways. But that's just kind of,
but we're trying to be deep.
but but the but the thing is, I think it's more intention, right? Because I think this is very useful for us. At
Intention
least
is an
that's
important part of it. I think
because it's not like, oh, we're
intention.
doing this for money because there ain't no money in this, right? I mean,
Yeah,
maybe, but like it's
this
not
serves a different function, like primarily for sure. It is an intellectual exploration. It is
because
a
yeah.
therapeutics exploration.
Because if it is for money, we won't be doing this. We'll be doing some stupid stuff, right? If it's for money, if it's
True.
like trying to get viral,
Would be doing the
whatever.
trendy stuff.
Yeah, we'll be doing stupid things, but we're not. We're not trying to. At least not
We
purposeful.
just don't know how to do it successfully yet. But
Yeah.
wait,
Which which is
wait.
kind of it
We're
was kind
gonna.
of I mean,
I'm
it's
coming over, and I'm gonna bring costumes, and we're gonna do some skids. It's gonna change the format.
yeah, but that's the thing, kind of the self-referential loop, right? Everybody is participating in it, and in a way, there are benefits. I'm not saying it's all bad, but yeah, there's a lot of
But dude, it's too much. Because how many accounts do you need to follow?
yeah.
How many things can you read at the same time? You know what I mean? So I find it overwhelming. Maybe that's my personal problem because I I don't know. I kind of find doing too many things already like overwhelming enough. It's like we talk sometimes that like I don't know how people have so much in their life where they would have a career, a marriage, kids, a side project, a doctorate that they're doing, like a master's they're doing, and
I
a
don't know.
a degree here. They're doing they're getting the what is it, the Master of Business, the MBA. Yeah, I'm doing MBA. Yeah, you have do MBA. Yeah, okay. And as an adult with family and and MBA, how do people have just the mental space and capacity to it?
I think part of the problem is, and again, this is symptomatic of it too, is that I maybe in my case is I overanalyze too much. Then that's the problem. These people are
Oh
doing
yeah,
things,
they just
and we're just
do it.
thinking
Maybe
about
just jump
them
into it.
doing their things, like being incomprehensible. Like, why are they doing all this stuff? What they're doing?
I guess so. Okay, like the most, like the biggest parallel I can think of is that time when I went back to college. Remember, I to finish the degree while I was still working full time online as a remote PM.
Yeah,
That was that was strange, dude. I would be sitting in college on my laptop working as an actual professional
yeah,
in the field, like making like bank too. But I'm in college because I have to be physically present there because I do need to finish this degree.
yeah,
And I remember how I went in that process because yeah, there was no thinking. Like if you were asking me to like think, I was like, how am I gonna do this? This is insane. This is impossible. But I felt this necessity. I felt like that was my only option going forward. Funnily enough, I thought I actually had to have that degree in order to get visa, like working visa to US. So there was actual purpose to it, and that was my motivation. But the whole thing was erroneous because, as it turns out, I did not properly understand the requirements of the visa. I thought that the degree I'm getting is the degree that they need, but it wasn't even that. It was because Ontario has weird freaking degrees that don't equate to US degrees.
Right.
So I wasted my time on that stuff, but at least I got my diploma. Just barely got in the door. I think they got me the diploma just out of pity. Because it was pathetic at that point. I was trying to finish it for so long, and I was a shit designer, so it did not.
Well, you should be glad that you didn't do that because, dude, designers are being replaced, man, with AI and everything. I mean, you can still be a designer, but you're gonna be the one that's like high level directing how the AI is being used, basically. Yeah. But that we were talking about ego. That's ego, right? The idea that you're chasing after something that you want, that you cognize, okay, this is what I want because I want to get more of whatever.
But that's the
but you see the motivating force,
anybody's life, though.
Right. But you see the motivating force. So imagine without that, then how would you motivate yourself? It's like if I'm not.
That's what I'm saying. Well, that's where some of these spiritual ideas are so crazy because like that's where you would go back to Taoism because that's through that lens you could see like there's nothing to do, just be.
I mean,
and then you get hungry.
I am where I am today doing nothing is because that is essentially how I feel. And that's why I'm not doing nothing, you know? Yeah. And that thinking is see, this is the part where I think intelligence is very interesting because that self-awareness and that kind of thing can change. We were talking about how does that change anything? Well, it does change stuff because, in my case, maybe of all this overthinking or analyzation. For example, for one aspect of it is that I am okay with essentially living the rest of my life single or by myself or whatever, because I couldn't see somehow that's the over-analysis perhaps. I couldn't see spending a life with another person in that capacity, like as a couple with a woman. For some reason, that's not registering, and for some reason, I'm okay with that. So imagine that's very counter to what evolution wants you to do, right? I mean, imagine like a quote-unquote normal person will be like, well, I'm going to go out there, date, this, that, whatever, doing anything you can to try to, create offsprings. That's basically the goal. So meaning I failed the game of evolution, basically. And I have consign myself basically to just whatever, like it's just existence and then non-existent. That's it.
Right.
And basically the bloodline stops here, and I'm okay with that. Imagine how a mind can comprehend that and be like, okay, whatever.
Right.
So that's intelligence, right? Imagine if you don't have the intelligence to it, you would be animals. You would just go out there and procreate left and right.
Yeah,
right? Continue the line no matter what.
You just give in to the instincts more, I guess, right?
But because I'm not saying this is the right way to go. I'm just saying for some reason
the whole planet will die out if everybody does that.
So that's not how you're supposed to do it. But for me, I'm okay with it. For some reason, it just like maybe again I can see that in terms of under the rubric of sexual selection, I don't tick the box in many aspects, right? And that's the problem too. I think maybe it is true that this intellectualism is not helping me because you're not engaging in the stuff that you're quote unquote supposed to engage. And you're like analyzing everything and be like, oh, that's not worth it. Juice is not worth the squeeze. Fuck it. Well, imagine you're writing yourself out of the gene pool. The mind can do that, right?
Yeah, but I mean, at this point, I do think about the fact that, well, anything it's still all arbitrary.
Yeah.
Like, as we talked about, it's like, what does it matter? What does it really matter? Because it only matters when you select a specific perspective. But if you can change this perspective from whatever to whatever, what do you make what takes the validity, right? What takes precedence? Anything you take, any stance you take will be just arbitrary. If you can take a stance, oh, you're a human, you're supposed to be caring for the human race. Being human is all about relations and family and offspring. This is just some ideas and some opinions, man. There's nothing that make them primal. You can make some arguments for this and that, but you can say like, I mean, there are Satanists out there. Satanists exist, and they have a very uh, specific worldview, which I don't think I can formulate it at this point. But it's not like they're evil or anything. They just have their own perspective with their own little principles in mind and their own kind of societal rules. But it's very counter to what most of society would deem. They're just conscious about selecting several principles which they hold as they just like those, essentially, you know? So it all comes down to this preference. Oh, you want that? That's as valid as anything, you know? The only part where it clashes is like what hurts whom, right? But even that stuff is up for interpretation, you know? As we are in a culture where people can say like, I'm a victim, and then you're somehow a perpetrator now.
And you see, this is what society don't like, is that they actually, again, going back to the want of certainty, right? They want people to be believing in more or less the same thing because they don't want voices that are too contrary to, you know, either what they believe or what they think is, because, for example, this type of thinking that I was just saying, yeah, it's not good for society if everybody think this way, you know?
Right.
That's totally not, it's not will be not the case because people have different experiences there, had different pressures, different inputs and outputs. So it meaning that some other people in a different environment will not formulate this type of thought because they never experience it in the way that some others do, and therefore they never had those conceptions.
But also, you know what's a crazy part? That you could change.
I could, but you see, the problem
You
is
could actually change.
I could, but now I don't want to. This is the problem, right? This is the part where, like, okay, before I could say, oh yeah, maybe I have some desire to find a relationship, this and that. But now it feels like I don't find the energy. I don't find the desire to do it at all. So I can, maybe this is what people in some of these people in Japan, probably how they feel. They just like, nah.
But yeah, it is just, it's a reality. But that's the part where, I mean, it's interesting because it plugs into everything, right? Because if you go to a mental health professional, they'll probably diagnose you with something.
Do something, right?
Yeah. But that's where a good question arises. When do you know that you need to change or that you need somebody's help in this? This is the big reason that I never really engaged with any mental health professionals, because I just don't trust nobody. Because I think no matter what, another person will still have their own indoctrinations, will have their own systems, will have their own beliefs. And it's not like just because you're a doctor, you're suddenly immune to human psychology and you're all maintaining a Hippocratic oath and all of that. It all sounds great in principle. It's not how it works in real human world, you know. At some point, you stop being so naive and you're like, I don't know, man. Nobody has your best interests in mind. Nobody knows what's good for you, what's right for you. I'm telling you, if you're going to go to this professional, it could be almost like an experiment I actually would want to see. But I think I remember reading and watching enough on this topic that essentially the psychiatric industry has been exposed already, that there is no objective system to even consider a person sane or insane. It's just somebody's opinion.
Yeah.
So that's crazy, you know? But all of this is kind of a pointer to the fact that it's all back on you to figure out what it is for you to do and why for you to do it. And if you do have this internal, structure, explanation, feeling, etc., and that's how it manifests, the question is, what is there to do about it and for whom? Because, I mean, for some people, like, they have a problem with their family, with their relatives, who like won't let them be. Like a mother won't let like a person, like their daughter or son, like be. They will like be on their ass, like, no, you have to get married. This is insane. Like they will actually be like insane about it, right? Where some people are in trouble with that because like other humans won't let them be because they feel like it's their duty to get them on the right course, and the right course meaning whatever that other person thinks is right. So it's this weird paradox of what society wants out of you and what you want and how much you own both. That's something I've been kind of thinking about lately as well. And it's a strange balance to think about.
Yeah, it's a tricky part because how much do you believe? Because certainly you as individual, we as individuals have so many blind spots. So the dialogue is needed. You do have to interact with other people and get their sense of what's going on, right? So, but if you only believe in what other people say, then you don't have a thought of your own, and then you become victims of other people's manipulation, right? This is how cults started, right? People convince you of certain thing, and if you just believe in it, then they can lead you astray. And if you don't have any sort of skeptical thoughts, then yeah, you will be your life will be directed by other people, right?
Yeah,
There are forces at
that
play.
was like one of the most disenchanting realizations of my life, and it's important to have that as a conscious thought that there are whole ass people and organizations out there who are consciously trying to bamboozle you.
Yeah.
That was the scariest part for me to realize, because now the world is filled with people who are technically your enemies because they want some shit done to you at your expense for their benefit. That's just the reality.
Yeah.
And that's crazy.
Yeah. That's what's happened. And these are things that always have been happening. But then also conversely, as individuals, we also have to think about, okay, you have also people, especially those who are in power, and they are getting to a point where, they get more and more power, and they start thinking, oh, I'm the one. And then they would start doing things by not only just not trust other people, but also like they don't listen to any advice, anything, right? And so that can also be a problem because it's just an echo chamber, right? You created an environment by which you shut off all information and all you have is your own directive, you know? And that can be, because the thing is, the world is a complex place. And for one individual to really have all the points, to have all the access to all the information is impossible. There's no way you can make decisions without some kind of help, right? Imagine you're a CEO of a company. You can't make that decision without access to information. Like, how is the company doing? You have
Right.
to know these things, and how are these information presented? You can't be there all the time, and you can't be everywhere. So there has to be a structure by which that information is fed to you truthfully, so you can make that decision. But the problem is, human error, lying, internal struggle, whatever, right? So any human structure is going to inherently have those problems. Either you don't listen to people enough, or you listen to people way too much, right? So it's like, these things are happening, and and it's I remember there was I guess it's an online challenge, and they would have record people in different scenarios, like between couples, bosses, and employees, like listen but don't judge. And literally,
Hmm.
the guy will be listening to them telling them something in which you're supposed to judge, basically, like a
Hmm.
secret.
Hmm.
And then you're not supposed to react somehow. And it was funny
Hmm.
because they have a whole bunch of employee behind the boss, and then they keep saying how one person was saying, "Oh, I purposefully delete client emails just because I can." And the guy couldn't control it. The boss was like, "What?" And then we listen, we don't judge. And he's like, all kinds of shenanigans,
Oh
right? That you would
my
not tell a
God.
soul, right?
I
But
would
then it's
not
like,
tell that a soul, dude. What the hell? That's unhinged type of behavior.
yeah. So it's like, and the boss just couldn't control himself. But
Yeah, what the hell, dude? That's not something you tolerate. I mean, for
no,
any reason. What the hell?
but yeah,
That's insane
apparently people
behavior.
start, this is how crazy it is in modern day, right? Like people actually play this as a game,
Yeah,
almost like a
people are like,
game,
don't give a crap, dude.
But the stuff that people do, yeah. And then, so all kinds of psychologies going on, different situations that people have different take on it because of what they are, where they are, where they want to be, and how, yeah. In this case, yeah, the employee might just feel like, I want some sense of power. Okay, so this is the
Yeah.
power that I can exercise. It's twisted, but it's human, right? It's kind of what some people will do, right? You would find scapegoats or something
Well,
to
when we were just describing kind of this issue of, it's kind of, to me, it's still an issue of governance, because I was thinking of, like, if you were, say, in a position of power today, what is a good way to be in that position? Because that's got to be its own science, right? The closest thing I can think of is like is Game of Thrones, that like has so much good stuff on the topic of power, right? Because so many people want it, so many people try to come at it at different ways and strategies, right? But they all wrestle for power, so influence to be of our people, to controlling other people and resources and stuff. But I recently remember this scene with Tywin Lannister, I think, talking to the potential king to be the Tommen, I think Tommen.
Oh yeah, the son,
some,
right?
some young boy, and he's some young dude, right? Who's like, oh, you may be king, you know, and he's engaging him in this friendly banter, but he's like, what makes a good king, do you think? And the boy keeps guessing, like, oh, strength, you know, like justiness, you know, this and that. And eventually he guesses correct, like, no, it's wise. The good king must be wise. It's like, yes, but what makes a king wise? And then the Tywin Lannister himself says, he listens to his advisors, you know? But even that in itself is this advice seemingly given by this semi-relative, I guess, in good faith, which sounds good, which sounds correct. Wise, yeah, wise king would be listening to other kind of, council who are, experts in their domains. Sounds good. But even that advice coming from the member of the council is to essentially groom the young king to listen to him so he can exert power himself. Mindfuck of a scene, you know? So, but that in principle sounds correct, because yes, you cannot be relying on yourself as the authority on everything. That's not possible. You're not going to be able to, if you have a scientist on your council, he has a job, and you cannot, like, it's would be a bad leadership and use of power to say disregard his conclusions and opinions on the matter of science. That would be dumb, right? So the wise would be essentially understanding your limitations and when to hand off the authority and decision-making power to other trusted sources. But even that's just theory, because in reality there could be egos and desires and politics and all of that and stuff that you don't know, which is like, this is my big problem with human interactions, is that there's too much subtext that, like, I'm not even aware of.
It's to me
is at play.
Other humans are part of that unknown. You don't know what they're gonna do, what they want. At least to me, I know there are people who are very good at reading other people and they can suss out what they want. But I'm one of those literally socially blind people, right? It's like, I don't understand what they want. Or at least, some stuff I can, but there are other more subtle things. It's like, well, I can't read between the lines. I'm sorry. It's not something that you can. For some reason,
it's like much more socially widespread and acceptable to be communicating that, because to do it overtly would be too, I don't know, rude or something, or too direct. But, and also can be a part of the fact that different cultures do it differently, because I think for sure, like in Russian culture, things are stated much more directly, just because, I don't know, I guess that's how language works and everything else, just evolved around that. But even then, there's still subtext in all the social situations, right? Because in all societies, because there's still some kind of conscience, I guess, part, which is, it's like we do the social filtering and limitation, right? Because you may want to say something about a person, like you may think like, oh, he's an asshole or something, but you don't do that directly, because that would be direct confrontation and conflict and kind of like declaration of war, essentially, right? Because like, now that person will be hostile toward you, but you may feel that as an actual valid feeling that you have. So as a result, your communication with a person will definitely be colored by what you actually feel. That's the crazy part. So if they were astute enough, they could read between the lines and detect how you actually feel about them. And for some people, like, it's difficult to even hide that.
Yeah.
I think for
But
me it would be difficult to hide that in terms of like I don't
yeah,
think I'd be able to do it very well,
but
because that's just how you feel.
technically a more astute person would actually be able to control their emotion and still
Right.
not blow up because of it, and somehow because they understand that, yeah, if I blow up, I'm making my intentions known, right?
But that part, it's there inevitably. Like for example, if somebody in a social setting, if somebody wronged you, if somebody, especially for men, like if somebody does something to essentially besmirch your honor in a social setting, it's gonna be
Yeah,
tricky to like
to
not be
not,
affected by it at
yeah,
all, and not like it's gonna linger in there all the time, and
yeah.
especially when it's fresh, and if it's something like a work setting where you still have to be working with that person, you will not be able to escape it much. You will be like not, you will be, you will dislike that person,
You know, it was such a big deal in the past. They actually had to have a duel. You know, you will have to
right?
reclaim the
It's
honor.
like,
Like
yeah, this is
somebody got
like
to die for this. Like you,
irreconcilable. Yeah,
yeah,
this
it
needs
has
to
to be. You
freaking
know,
be
so that's how
solved.
much people used to take honor, because that's something a representative of a person's value and everything, right? Because if you, yeah, if that's everything about that person, and if that is being besmirched without any reaction, then it's all about the social setting, right? How other people will view you. If somebody challenge your authority or challenge your honor, and then somehow you don't fight back, that's literally death in terms of socially. Like, you know,
Yeah, the best outcome of that is if you are so shrewd that you can deflect it with the, verbally.
right.
That is like the best. This is like the mastery. It
Yeah,
means
the
that you are
wit. You
so
have
sharp
wit.
that you like, yeah, you're unassailable, right? Even though somebody comes at you with something like vicious, and if you don't let it attack, like, affect you, and you're like, well, at least I'm not da 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 da, and something like,
Yeah.
appropriate, something like truth and real, everybody will like, oh, you got, you got handled. You thought you had something, but you got handled. It's that. But even that ability to mm, like roll with punches, I would say, right? It's kind of like rolling with punches. It would take for you to not take yourself seriously or the situation seriously, and to recognize that some kind of make silly fun of the situation or something. But even that requires a certain amount of, I don't know what exactly. But like I remember something like that happened to me in a when I was working. I was like attending a virtual meeting, and I have this big ass headphones because this like the only thing that was working, that
Yeah.
works for me. Like all the other stuff just doesn't work well. So I would appear in those like in meetings, and most people don't use headphones because you look like a dork using big ass headphones like that, right? There's a gaming headset essentially. So, but I don't that my alternative is like what to get me some kind of better headphones, other headsets of headphones. Like I didn't want to bother with it, so I would appear in those, and some guy like made fun of me for that because I was like, the meeting was just starting. He was like, "Ooh, you look like you were like operating like a out of a airplane tower or something like that, right? Something innocuous."
Right.
And I was like, "Yep." Like I didn't know what to do with it because it was like, I what do you want me to do with that? Like, yep, that's the case, you know. And he was meaning it as a joke. He was just trying to be like, I don't know, do banter or something. But I just didn't feel it. Like I don't know. I didn't know the person, I well enough, and I was just like not. I'm awkward in social situations like that. Like if
Mhm.
I'm in a company of well-known friends, I would have fun. I would say something ridiculous, it would be awesome. But because I don't know what this person, who is they are, what they mean, what they want out of this, I'm like, I get frozen. Yeah. I also go into, uh, like, I can't think in that situation. So I was like, yep, that's the case. And I feel like eventually like, it got awkward because like I couldn't like pick it up or do it with it. He was like, yeah, well, that was just a joke. I'm like, yep. It's like I can't do small talk on those business meetings because I'm there
Right.
to like to do the business meeting, and I can't do the small talk. It just doesn't work because somehow it's like a different mode, you know? I can't be in that friendly mode if I'm just in a business meeting with strangers. I can't associate with people that quickly.
Because it would be fake. You're faking it.
Yeah, like you have to pretend, right? You have to do work, like play a little pretend, but
yeah,
I just dislike playing pretend.
but that's the
I don't like it.
difference. That's the cultural difference, because in East Asia, it's all about pretension. That's the stupid part as well, because it seems like they pretend way too much, right? It's like, especially in China, Japan, all like that. Like, yeah, they're very polite, sure, but like, you just don't know what they want. They just present you with this fake smile, fake face, but that's their basic thing. It's like they might hate you guts, but then like they smile, they bow, it's like,
Well, funny enough, like there was that one project where we dealt with a Japanese team from Japan. We were making some a digital product for them, doesn't matter. But we didn't have our shit together. Like we're scrambling. It was not a good business. Everything was falling apart, so to say. And dealing with those Japanese folks, they barely spoke any English. Like their English was noticeably like, barely, to the point where I think when they were in meetings, they would mostly speak in Japanese among themselves, like on the thing, because they need to like confer with each other. And then they would say something to us. But the way they would communicate back to us, no bullshit. They were like, no, this shit is wrong. You fucking promised us this here. This is fucked up. Go redo this. Like, what we'll do. They were very matter of factly, but they were very direct. So maybe Japanese business with Western, is different, because
probably different.
They did not mince words. They were like, yeah, no, this is all wrong. This is fucked up. Because I think because their standard of quality is so much higher, that they was just generally disgusted by this level of incompetence, that they were like, these people don't even deserve our politeness.
This is like shameful. It's shameful display,
It's like, this is like, we need to not deal with them, essentially. So that was funny.
Yeah, on the question of what it would take to be
to rule properly, I guess, right?
Good leadership, I think part of it is that you need to establish, by example,
type of behavior that you want everybody to support. Yeah.
Right. So which is why, in the Game of Thrones example, Ned Stark, even though, he perished, but everybody really liked him, right? Everybody thought that was how you're supposed to be.
Honorable and stuff.
Yeah, but that, in a way, even though the show did that as a subversion, I think ultimately they was trying to say that is the kind of leader that you would want, because you see what happened when that doesn't happen, right? When the rest of them fighting over, and eventually, now of course the show kind of got derailed later on, but I think it was kind of, people were saying in the book it was much more nuanced, and it was more, they do show you the result of all the shenanigans. All these people think that they know how to play this game, right? And so, even though Ned Stark lost, he lost it with his life, but the thing is, what he inspired, with people, I think that is something where an honorable person actually does live on, when people forget about all the power grabbing tyrants, right? I mean, they still,
there are people who get inspired by this, essentially, because they recognize there's something great about it, essentially dying for your principles. It means that there's some people hold something sacred and important enough, but also by all analysis, stuff like that holds up. If you understand why it's being done, it kind of makes you, retain hope in humanity, that there's, okay, we can make it work, because if there are people like that. So everybody likes that.
Yeah, and this was the part of that show, that new the Game of Thrones, the Night of the Seven Kingdom. I think one of the themes that they explore in that book.
I started watching that one. Yeah,
was that, I don't know how far you got to. I don't want to spoil it, but
is there, how many seasons? Are there seasons?
No, I think there's only 6 episodes for now, at least. They probably want to do more, but
yeah, I'm on episode 5, I think.
Oh, is that almost to the last?
Almost there. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it was part of that was the exploration of honor, right?
Right.
How people portray themselves in situations. I think that part of it is maybe that part is inspired a lot by the
Yeah,
mythology
and
of the
the
medieval
decision
period.
making, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
it's inspired by that, but it's kind of a mythical thing, right? I mean, in a way, there are just as many stories of how people in the past just don't keep their honor. They just do whatever shenanigan to get away with, you know. But there is that story of how if you are a knight, you're supposed to act a certain way, right? Protect the
right.
innocent. You need to do these things because that's what the honorable thing to do. And another way is, in a way, is that kind of oath taking. I think ancient world is kind of how you establish social rules, right? That you're supposed to act a certain way, and if you give your word, that you must, even on the pain of your life, you have to
Yeah.
maintain it, right? So that level of adherence, I think, creates certain structures because people realize that life is too chaotic. You have all kinds of people doing different things. You have bandits. You have all, you know, it's a dangerous world. And so to create a sense of semblance of order, you gotta have these rules, and people have to hold on to them for dear life. Like you have to treat these rules as like holy. Like you cannot break it, right? If you break it, you're no longer human, right? And it's kind of like that sentiment. I think it's a beautiful sentiment to have. And I think in a lot of way it makes sense why people in the past would even have something like that because this is what's lacking in the modern world. Because now words means nothing. People can talk days and days
Yeah.
about principles and things and whatever, but nobody, almost nobody, right? It's very hard to find anybody is actually, the action behind the word,
Yeah,
right? It's
because
all,
there's just no, I guess there are no repercussions for not keeping your word anymore, right?
yeah, because back then there's actually shame. Like you would bring shame to your family as honor if you actually betray your own word, right? Like that's
Yeah.
how serious people treat it. And that's kind of the thing that we're lacking now because everything is permissible in these days. People can have all kinds of thoughts, right? And that's the tricky part. It's like how do we decide what things should we uphold and what things
Right.
should we allow for more, say, different opinions? You know, there are almost certain things that feels like it should just be a rule. You cannot break it, you know? But these days with the rhetoric, everything seems permissible. You can be anything. You can be whoever you are. You can be whatever. And that seems to be the problem. Like, well, now we're lost. Like, what's the meaning of all these information? Like, you can have all kinds of opinions, yeah, but there are facts, right? And if we don't respect facts, then anything goes. Then you can create any sort of narrative and go with that, and then essentially have no repercussions. And this is the problem with the modern world. Like you you start losing trust. There's no more trust anymore between people, and therefore it's a hindrance because that's the cost of doing business. The cost of doing business is higher now because you don't establish that basic connection with another human being by trusting them to honor the contract or honor the
Right.
thing that they. And so now everybody's second guessing. Everybody is
Because
put their gun out.
before the insurance would be the fact that that's just you're not living in this one giant world where you're dealing with a person from another side of the world. You're dealing with the same trader you see because that's what trading is. This
Yeah.
guy goes from one route to another one, and then he uses the same route. So you're dealing with the same guy, and you're gonna have a relationship with him. Unless you choose kind of a life of a bandit where like you don't care about you don't have a community. You're just exploiting strangers. But for anything stable, anybody who's having any kind of livelihood and community and family, etc., that's just a bunch of stable human connections that you wouldn't sacrifice for anything because that's the only way to do anything. You'd have to just cooperate with everybody. No, not shafting anybody. Just like everybody's fair because that's the only way to do the system. The opposite of that is anarchy, and that just doesn't go anywhere. That just goes to destruction because there's
And
no
that's
system to speak of.
and we're just playing with that, I guess. It's just half anarchy and half just. They're just too chaotic, right? It's more chaotic now than ever because people just you wouldn't know because yeah, you would everybody in their right mind would act in the same way. Like if you see a stranger, you would be on your guard because you don't know that person, right? And we're creating this modern city life like that where everybody is a stranger and you just had to try to ascertain if they have ill intentions or not. And so that just create more stress that you didn't need. But here we are, with this current maelstrom of all kinds of information out there, all kinds of people that you interact with online or offline. It's just, yeah, it's harder and harder to distinguish what's what, and
Yeah. Who wants what by sharing what information? But yeah, still there's good stuff out there, good people, good organizations. It's just, yeah, I come back to that. Just essentially have to do research and select what you want to be exposed at on a systematic level. And just these days, I'm really just not. Don't venture into the wild of the internet, dude. It's not safe.
it's too crazy.
It's not safe, dude. It's like going into the freaking wilderness and like, let's see what's going on there. And there's all kinds of monsters out there. So definitely just curate your feeds. But let's get back to this. Well, I want to finish this infographic before we go off too far off, because we did go on a few tangents from the, we're talking about the way the brain kind of constructs the picture of reality, right? And we stopped at the part where it's kind of like the consciousness and a healthy human mind lives in between the extremes of too much order and too much chaos, which is very interesting that's the fact. But I do feel it like that even on myself. Yeah, there's something about like I'm not able to maintain a stable routine. Like for some reason I can't, because as soon as it becomes stable, definitely something goes out the window. Even like the example of like last night, that was it. Because if I didn't stay later last night, I would have gone to sleep, woke up at the right time, and it would be a routine, so an expectable routine continues. But something like this happens because I don't know why. That's the thing. That's the paradox. So maybe subconsciously, that's how I'm seeking more chaos, So this could be a manifestation of that. But the next part of this infographic, let's see what it was. Oh yeah, it was talking about kind of the effects and role of psychedelics in the brain. So that's the cool part. There's actual research on this, scientific research, and they do see that with this psychedelic state, it's legitimately more activity in the brain. There's this neural flexibility, neural entropy that they call. I guess there's more informational flow as a result of it. So more neural connections, and they're able to connect with parts that are not normally connected, Then there's this weaker default mode network activity, which is this, I guess, area of the brain that is generally active when in your normal everyday life. It's the self-referential thinking, rumination, and mind wandering that is normally is there for some reason. And apparently, yeah, in this psychedelic state, that activity ceases, and that what gives this feeling of I just comes like openness, I guess. So they classify it as loosen, rigid patterns and beliefs. You're not holding on to your beliefs as much, and it opens the door to new perspectives, insights, and mystical experiences. So it's this very interesting, highly connected, open state of brain and mind as a result. So result, they talk about boundaries soften, the sense of separate self dissolves, and unity, interconnectedness, and transcendence emerge. So that means that this way of being is, at least it's possible. That's what it tells me. The only difference is that it's a temporary experience, but you can be in that state and still exist, as some kind of something. Are you still you in that state? I'm not sure. Are you still even human? No idea. But the fact that it's available and this is what happens and we can see it and view it, that's the cool part. And they have a few more points here at the bottom. So they view as the ego is this evolved to organize experience, protect and plan, enable civilization. So to me, that sounds like some kind of literally an analytical tool. So like a little calculator that is attached to your mind with which you can do all these things. But along with that, it brings anxiety, self consciousness, fear of death, and chronic rumination. Though the ego is a useful servant but a terrible master. And I think that's what I meant when I was talking about some kind of relationship with the mind,
Mm.
because the mind is and the ego, are they the same thing? I'm not sure, but it's some kind of this thinking process. In the general sense, I would call it that, right? So the ego is there, is doing all these things. It evolved. I think that part is important to know, that it evolved to do some kind of jobs. So it's there to be helpful, but it can essentially be maybe dysregulated, or displaced or not employed properly. So something needs to be done with it to keep it doing its job and not you know do other stuff. They also mentioned that traditional cultures used many methods to access such altered states and transcend this ego, essentially, which includes fasting, ritual and ceremony, sensory deprivation, meditation, breath work. So apparently all of that kind of changes your brain state to enable those states. And the example they were talking about is the illusion mysteries in ancient Greece. I think you mentioned them before as well, right? Did you?
I mean
What
that,
was
yeah,
the?
there used to be, yeah, in ancient Greece, they will have these secret.
Was it? I think it's these ones then. Illusion mysteries. That's what they're called.
Yeah, they call them mystery. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, that's the
Okay.
one.
Yeah. So there's that. Like we have records of this, right? That people had engaged with these states for quite a long time. It's just in different ways. But this latest revival of psychedelics is kind of the latest wave of it, which is not exactly mainstream, but it's kind of out there in the open at this point. Um, that they talked about some of these historical figures which appeared early on, who kind of dug into it and started experimenting it with, and started to explore the ideas of the Eastern spiritual traditions and stuff. But then, yeah, I think what happened is that the West freaked out. The U.S. prohibited and banned research for everything for many decades, and now it's kind of resurfacing, and actually people are doing research. So healing the mind, flexibility is medicine. Many mental illnesses involve being trapped in rigid patterns, so psychedelics may help increasing neural plasticity, loosening entrenched beliefs, breaking harmful loops, allowing new possibilities and healing to emerge. Yes, that's what they're doing now. They're doing some trials. They actually have some applications already. So it's very interesting that this is, because that definitely sounds like a part of what could be considered medicine on if it can alleviate a lot of these symptoms where it does seem like a person gets like locked into some kind of static state, which is just they can't get out of. So I can see how it would be helpful for that. And then the mystical experience, um, yeah, is just whatever these feelings of unity, timelessness, and sacredness, and whatever else that comes in, that itself is reported to be a transformational and meaningful experience by people, even if they've done it like once in their life. And it does improve all these symptoms of life that people find challenging and helpful. But yeah, they did highlight meditation as this essentially a more gentle way, to cultivate awareness and soften the ego gently, which I'm still curious about how that works, because I think it is somehow just modifies the brain activity essentially. Somehow, like what it does here to this brain, I think it does something like that, but just by the power of your own
Right.
conscious thought and attention, where you kind of calm down. You find a way to shut down or calm down your brain activity, where you move more towards this, where it's just not running this self-referential loop, which is just like me 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 me.
Yeah. Which is again, part of the problem with the ego, right? Where is so you can say that it's so well designed that it just care about itself, right? So it's doing
Yeah,
everything in its power to kind of
kind of goes into
maximize
overdrive or something.
the self's benefit. But that the problem is it's constantly thinking about the self, which can, as it says, result in depression or kind of self-consciousness about, oh, what if I made this mistake and this and that, and kind of, and yeah, if you channel it in the right way, that's helpful because then you can self-regulate, right? The idea that you can criticize yourself, but not like constructive criticism, right? You try to understand more about yourself, but that's the integration part of it. Because if it's just pure ego, it's just like, yeah, me, all about me. I need to get more, this, that, whatever. But it's also self-referential. So it's keeps thinking about itself. It's like, oh, did I do this right? Or,
Hmm.
that type of thing. And just keep making, I don't know, making, what was that phrase? Making an anthill, right? Making a,
Mole out of an anthill.
yeah, more out of an anthill. It's like you're creating more problems that's just self-created because it's more about that self-perception, right? Your perception of self. This is why perhaps in certain cases of why narcissism is such a problem for some people is just, well, if they do have that, it's like they only see themselves. They don't see any other reference
Uh,
points.
but this is slightly a bit different. Like what this is a fresh view, just specifically because of this idea of the chaos and order. I like specifically that angle of it because it puts this journey, I guess, kind of a spiritual journey on this map where so the chaos, the entropy exists, right? Then brain creates that order, but that order is kind of just a rigid, limited snapshot that is static. The ego forms around that because it's like okay, we have this reality, right? That we have a picture of it, and I think it's trying to like take care of it or preserve it or something, right?
Mm,
Or use it as like this is it, this is the reality.
yeah.
But that's not the reality. That's just the snapshot. And something like these, practices, psychedelics, all of this loosens that, I guess, ego's grip on the situation, right?
Mm,
And then you have some kind of mystical experiences where you don't even know what's happening, but you feel stuff. But you do, there are both immediate and residual effects of it where you don't feel as selfish. That's at the very least, right? And you feel more connected. And then you now have to incorporate, and that, I guess, that introduces that a bit more chaos and entropy into the system. Then brain has to reconcile this new experience, new feelings, and kind of plug them into the picture. And and the ego like readjusts around that.
yeah, reintegrate.
Re-
It's
yeah,
like this is basically almost like the ego's version of the hero's journey. Like you're
right,
supposed to
right.
go through that as well. Like, in that cycle, you have to sacrifice something, right? It has something gotta go.
Hmm.
And that's you form new understanding by, reconstitute. So basically, in
But what actually happens? So, like in this cycle, when it goes to ego forms again,
because
is
you
that just like a rigidity in thinking, like a pattern,
well,
a pattern that becomes too stuck and rigid,
no, I
and it needs to change
I
after
think
that?
that no matter what, you need some form of ego. You need some amount of ego. Like you can't go without it because this is what constitutes the
Because
fundamental
like
how you
how
operate as a
yeah, how
single
does it
individual.
function otherwise?
Because without, like, okay, so the psychedelic could loosen it, but it's not completely shattering it, right?
Right, right. It
So
never
meaning
goes away,
that
really.
that experience, just like anything you experience, you remember that difference and being able to experience that the mystical, if you will, that experience, it told the mind that, oh, there's more to it than just what I thought the world was.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
And so
So
you are reconciling that fact afterwards. And so this is the growth, right? Okay, now I understand that's the case. So
I mean,
how
but
do I
that is really like a mystical experience in terms of like, what the hell is that? And why does that happen? Because
right?
you don't really do it to yourself. I mean, you do it out to yourself out of curiosity, or now, that there's going to be a, a medical actual procedure to go through it, and this is, I guess, where it's going. And so, some intelligent application for when, we as a society, we recognize that it's needed. It's like, oh, you've become too rigid. Go do a session. But then even that is strange. Like, why does that need to happen?
Because you
So,
recognize that you have a problem, right? Functionally.
but why is that a problem?
Well, because like if you have
Because
too
reality
much,
changes all the
if
time.
you have too much ego, then it's all about yourself. You're
So
just
this is like an
selfish, right?
ego.
You're like,
This is like ego pruning, like ego.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like
in the extreme example, you'll be a really selfish person, right? You'll be like, you don't
it's
care
like
about
ego
anybody.
hygiene.
Yeah. And if you
Interesting.
have enough sense to think that this is a problem, then you're trying to not have the problem, right? You try to kind of make it better by going through such a process, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is, well, the thing is, you have to recognize that you have this thing that which you do see as a problem. There's so many people who don't see it as a problem. They don't see it. They don't recognize it. They
Yeah,
don't.
this is such a tricky territory, because in these like big ideas, the saying that yeah, it's definitely all very mysterious, but the self is a tool, not the truth. I don't know what that actually means. The self
Meaning
is a
is an
tool, not a
illusion,
truth.
right? So meaning that the self, the ego, the sense of self is an illusion because you're presenting it as if this is everything, right? It's saying that there's more to it, at the very least.
Yeah, but where is it? And what's going on with it? And
Which
why?
is well,
What's
okay,
the deal?
but yeah, but
Like,
nobody can
what's my
find out.
role in all
Okay,
of
so
this?
nobody explaining, and the process doesn't explain
Yeah,
itself. It's saying, hey, this
yeah.
is the reality, just accept it. Like, no, it's an
No, it
experience,
does.
but
Nothing makes sense.
yeah, but that's how the mystical part, right? It's like no, it's still not explainable or how you're supposed to comprehend it, you know?
Yeah, like, I mean, I can see why people go towards something like, okay, there's a dude, there's one main guy, there's God, okay, and he's the main dude. And our relationship to him is that he is the main guy, and we just do whatever he says, because that's simple. That's at least like, all right, that's okay. I can go with that because at least I understand what's going on, right?
Yeah.
I'm this guy right here. There's some powerful
But
guy
the
out there.
reality is
Cool. But the reality is like, yeah, we don't know what's going on. It can be this, it can be that, it can be feelings of this and that. But then, yeah, the
but you
biggest strange part about the psychedelic experience is that they end. And it's also not extremely good if you just keep doing it all the time. Because at this point, there's been so many pioneers in the space who thought, oh, I'd go discover the edges. And they've done like some people, you can find it, like people write about this on Reddit, like on forums. I've done this stuff for every day for a year, bro. Yikes, dude! For a year, every day
lose
in
your
that
mind.
state. That's what's. I mean, some of them don't. Some of them like are still functional humans, but you you one would wonder what does happen. Like, what is different, and what is better. In the if that's is that better? Is that good?
Because I think that it's like energy levels, right? There are levels to this stuff that human cannot access, or at least you're not supposed to be at that level for extended period of time. You know, it's like,
Because it's like you still have to function in society, right?
yeah, which is why people on drugs, let's just say they're not normal, quote unquote, right? Because
Right.
they're out of their mind. They're not in their
Yeah.
normal state of mind. So therefore they cannot do any normal stuff that people as a functioning
Yeah.
human being, right? That you're supposed to do in this social kind of setting that we
They're
all
in their
live
own
in.
world.
Yeah, which is again, that process, this is chemically induced, can give you that sense, right? But in this case, they're saying, well, meditation could naturally, I guess, if you practice it, to give you more of that sort of egolessness. But then I don't think eliminating ego is really should or is the point of it. I mean, because you're no longer
Yeah,
human without it. This
yeah.
process
I
is
don't think
not.
it's gonna go. It's gonna work. If you lose it, you're gonna not be able to function or exist much.
Yeah.
You're not gonna be able to survive.
So
That's for sure.
functionally, I don't know. I mean, different belief, different religion can say all kinds of things about life, and but I think part of it, if you think about it, well, it's still part of the basic life cycle. So you can't really play around with that too much, Still have an ego. Yes, you can temper it. You can make yourself a better human being, I suppose, by not being so focused on your own ego, meaning you just need to try to be less selfish, more like, oh, I consider other people's point of view. And, that way you are expanding your mind, right? You are considering not just yourself, but your environment and the world in itself.
Dude, but that's like difficult to do, and that's not.
And it is, which is the reason why we have everybody
It's
doing
not
selfish things,
exactly a
because that's,
natural process, right?
yeah, it's not. Because you know what? This is an interesting, funny story. Was I was driving to another work site on the truck, and there was like a road that's like going uphill. And I guess because I'm in a big truck, right? It's slow. So climbing that hill, I'm like driving relatively slowly compared to a car. And there was a woman who was on the sidewalk. You're not supposed to cross the street because you're
All right.
supposed to do it at crossings. But I guess she tried to get to the other side by taking a shortcut, by trying to get to a time where there's no traffic and she can just go.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm driving too slow. And as I pass, it's like, faster. She yelled at me, just faster. I was like, you're the one illegally crossing the street and you want me. But then I start thinking, oh, yeah, she's just purely selfish. She just think, oh, I want it my way.
Right.
I want to do things my way and other people in my way. And I'm angry because they don't think about, oh, I'm actually breaking the law. I'm actually breaking the rule by jaywalking. And then I yelled at the truck, which the truck is just slow going uphill, right? But it's just basically, inconveniencing me, and therefore I'm angry. It's like,
man, yeah, that's pretty dumb.
But you see, this is what happens to most people, right? Like I'm not blaming her in this. I mean, it is wrong. Don't get me wrong. This is wrong. It's stupid. You're inconsiderate. But I get why this is what happened to a lot of people.
I've never done anything
purely
like
selfish, right? Like you just consider it all by yourself. But this is what, like, look, it might not happen to you, but it happens to other people because they are thinking purely about themselves. So many of people.
But I would recognize that that's way too much.
But
I want to cross this road. Yes, this truck is slow, but
only because you are realized enough. You have enough empathy and understanding to think that, okay, that is totally wrong. But some people, like this person, they didn't care. All they care about was you inconvenienced them,
right?
And they're angry, right? In her perspectives, like, yeah, I'm being delayed. I want to cross. I've been waiting for a while, but then you don't think that the fact that you're not supposed to cross there, So, but this happens a lot, and you didn't be surprised how many people act this way, or they operate in that way, where they're just purely anything that's inconveniencing me is wrong. They don't think about other people.
It's got to be connected to intelligence, right?
Well, you're supposed to, but there's people still do this, right? You would think that they will be smart enough to think that, well, this is wrong. And you could be doing something wrong, but you don't get angry at other people because you're the one that violating the law.
Right.
Right? It's like, stop right there, criminal scum. You're violating the law.
I mean, yeah, I guess this is degrees in how conscious your reactions can be. I mean, for sure, everybody has that.
But this is a person who's unconscious about the process, right? They're unconscious about what they're feeling. Yeah, they're frustrated because they wanted to cross, and this truck seems so slow. And then, like,
but that's another thing. Yeah, I can also imagine being that frustrated because if your nervous system is stressed enough, for sure you can be in such a state where like you can't control that. Because I've been there.
Right.
But that's like what do you what is there to do about that?
But there's no self-awareness then, right? You're letting your emotion get in the way all the time, right? You're not processing
But that's the thing. If you're, it's like your system is stretched thin for the amount of stuff it can be aware of. And this is the part where it's like it's not able, it's redlining, right?
Yeah, like I get
so
that.
The question is, what is there to do about that?
I get that people can have a bad day, they can have many things not going their way, and I get that. But if this becomes a problem, if you blow up every time something inconveniences you, then you have a problem. You have personal problem with your anger, right? You're not processing.
Unhappy and stuff.
Yeah, because everybody have a bad day. I mean, I get it, right? I mean, it's it happens. But if persistently you are having anger issue, just blow up just because something inconvenienced you or whatever, and you just have a problem. You have a problem processing your emotion, and that's just the end of that. And if you don't see it, then that's part of the problem, right? So I think that being more aware is really that. Like, the more you're aware, you're having a better time yourself because you are more calm, you're more collected. You're like, okay, I understand what's going on, right? You're not allowing that.
Ideally, what would happen is that you would be in that situation. You would become aware of that impulse coming up, before it takes over your behavior.
Exactly.
Before you scream, before you catch yourself and you're like, oh, right, this is just some bullshit. And then you go on with your day, right? And you just relax.
Yeah.
But
for some people, they're like, things are happening and they just immediately go to anger or immediately go to this outburst of, it means that something is happening in their life they have no control over, and they feel a lack of control because they what was anger? When you don't get what you want, right? You will get angry, right? You're inconvenienced or something doesn't go your way. Because why else would you get angry? Only because you're not getting your way, right? Yeah. So the mature response will be like, okay, process that information, because frankly, that's very childish to just have outbursts just because things don't go your way.
It's dumb because essentially, what do you think is going to happen? You think your goal is going to be helped with this? Because most of the time, no. The effect will be the opposite, right?
Yeah.
The truck driver is going to step out of the car and beat your ass.
Yeah, imagine just record scratch back in. What did you say to me?
Yeah. Because that also happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that person can also be stressed,
right?
And now that person is pissing them off. So it's goes around.
And imagine in the U.S., start getting the guns out. It's
There's so much road rage footage from that country.
It's crazy, bro.
Yeah. No, people do have problems with rage in there for sure.
Yeah.
There's unhealthy amounts of it.
Because of the speed by which they live their life. In the US, things are just like that. You got to do it fast. You got to do it.
It's both speed, but it's also just I think a lot of people are used to certain levels of comfort where they're any personal inconvenience, I gotta make
Yeah. And that's the problem, right? With this kind of ease of access to everything, the comfort, the convenience, and it breeds this type of...
That's the paradox, dude. That as soon as life gets too comfortable, it's you forget what real hardship is like. You start behaving way too entitled.
That's what happened to humans. It's the kind of... Yeah.
Dude, we used to not have plumbing.
Yeah.
We used to not have nothing. It's just dirt and crap everywhere. That used to be the case for hundreds of years, thousands.
But for the things that people take for granted, right? A lot of people were just kind of got so used to things kind of provided for them. And this is the part of the problem of the economy, because everything is revolved around make it easier, productivity, or all these kind of things to just make more money because you can make it easier.
This is why at this point I'm literally there is such a thing as what is it exactly? I think it's called strenuous life. Yeah, first of all, that's apparently it's a speech delivered by Theodore Roosevelt, but I'm referencing something else. There's this podcast called Art of Manliness. And essentially, they organize some kind of challenges, for people to engage in where I don't exactly know the structure, but yeah, they just do difficult, tough stuff, mostly related with fitness. But it is a bunch of men that just go get together and challenge each other to do physical achievements, I think even business achievements, and they kind of like made their own Boy Scouts, but for men.
Uh-huh.
That's a great idea. It's really cool because it it just it acknowledges that also there's something about a man that we do need challenges and we do need proper because that's how you hone, your skills, mental skills, physical skills. You need to adapt to your environment, but that environment, if there's nothing to adapt to, if it's just welcome to Costco, I love you. That's the result. Is that's the type of, so you don't want to be too comfortable. I think that's such a great wise point, that to consciously recognize that, and then to consciously put yourself in challenging situations, I think is a wise way to go around stuff, right? Because I mean, I felt it myself. Too much comfort, yeah, it turns you into a just smudge of a person
Yeah.
instead of smudge of a man versus. But that's the paradox, because who wants challenges and hard life? But then it turns out that you do, because it's like what it's early Peterson saying, right? Like you have to choose your suffering,
Yeah.
or it will be chosen for you. It's that. It still goes back to that. You see, so some of the stuff, some of the wisdom is unassailable like that, because it's is evaluated on the course of a span, right? If you have this backlog of experiences where I tried this, this, and this, right? You sample this lifestyle, this lifestyle, and this lifestyle, and one of them will be a winner, because overall, especially over a course of time, I think this is the biggest like secret to life, to wisdom, to decision making, is that you have to consider time. You have to consider what it's like to live, 80 years by yourself. And that's tricky before you do that. But it's stuff like that, essentially, right? It's trying to understand what are the consequences of these decisions.
Yeah, because I keep thinking about this, and it's weird how I don't really get affected by it as much, but sometimes I think about whatever I do, none of this really matters. So it doesn't matter how I do it because, well, I
It doesn't
factor in
matter, like,
how you experience life. I try to, for some reason, I keep trying to reconcile the fact that I also see that it's true that nothing that I do will ever be really anything that's, it's all relative, right? You can be a movie star, you can be whatever it is that you think that you
right.
have become a thing. But even
Yeah,
that it's nothing. What does
not
that
really,
even
no.
mean, right?
No.
It's in comparison to what? In what way? Right. I mean, there are all kinds of
Yeah.
metrics you can kind of stack up, as a game, as a challenge,
Yeah.
sure, but
A lot of it is, at most, is going to be kind of like a nice little illusion, even entertained by other people.
yeah,
Because, yeah, I was thinking about this. Like, even take a most successful celebrity, or, comedian or something. What does it matter to anybody what they are? Like,
yeah.
I can appreciate good comedy, good entertainment, good skill, etc. But I don't care really that much, about anything about that person. And, eventually everybody will be forgotten. So
Yeah.
how much of it really matters, and to whom? So,
But
because like we put all these weights on these things, but so often they're just gone without a trace, and then
yeah.
it didn't matter, like it didn't happen.
But it's like, but people still do things as if it has all the meaning, right? It's almost like the trick of it is like you have to recognize the truth, but then the art of it is still pretend that it mattered, right? Because you can create great things by
Right.
believing in that, and all the great arts and stuff. Part of it is there is ambition in that. There is a goal. There is a goal, and if you just believe nothing matters, then you wouldn't even try to do that, right? But these people still do the thing that they think is right, and therefore, I can't really say that it doesn't matter. It does. All these things are creative too, and I think a lot of it you do have to think of it as a service to other people or people who are still alive or who's humanity at large. Because if you it's specific in the way in the field of art. Right? If you create an artwork and if it is appreciated, it's like it is something by which you are helping other people, and you're not doing it for yourself, right? Like, I mean,
Mhm.
that's what the art is. It's like it's a dance between you and other people. You can't never be just like, oh, I'm doing it for myself. I'm just doing this. Like, no great art lasts like that. It won't last, right? No great art or something where, oh, I'm just so pompous about myself. I'm doing this just for my own whatever. Like, no, it's not that. The great art is not ever that. So in a way, I see how people try to create legacies because they think that, well, what else are you gonna do, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's the only it's like some kind of purchase, right, on reality in the face of essentially in the face of all the options that you have. It's not the worst option, right? But
Yeah,
even that is so tricky as because we were just talking about this whole ego thing,
yeah,
and one thing that you said like really makes me think about it, like about the fact that oh yeah, any goal you set and go after, it's technically it's comes out of ego a lot of the time, right? And to me, it's pertinent because I was just, I like watching this one Russian spiritual teacher who is talking from the standpoint of Advaita Vedanta, where the big thing is, from the way I understand the whole thing, the whole purpose of this philosophical system and tradition is just to make the mind shut up, because that's where all the problems stem from. And one of the bigger takeaways, the way he would explain individual inquiries from people, is that yeah, you cannot go after something because, oh, I'm going to have this business. It's going to be like this, and I want it, and I want all the goodies and all the money. The way he does it and the way he does his teaching. So he became this teacher, dude, kind of spontaneously. He does not have the, uh, you know, credentials or official blessing of anybody from anybody anywhere. He's just good at explaining it, and he learned it himself, and he applied it in his life, and he's happy, and that's why people listen to him. But the way he explains is that essentially you play this role that you find yourself in without holding tightly onto anything. So if you're just appearing in a situation where you have fun teaching others, and then you're playing this role of a teacher, but you don't have this idea of like, ooh, I'm a teacher, I'm going to tell them what's going to happen. You don't have these grand designs of thinking that you're going to do something, because essentially he acknowledges or kind of promotes this idea is that it is all happening automatically in a sense. So this ego centeredness is trying to appropriate what's mine. It's my doing. I did this, you know. Whereas
yeah.
I think it acknowledges the mysteriousness of everything, right? Of how anything works, of how our mind works, where the ideas come from, and it tries to make it like don't be so arrogant to assume that you're the one who's figuring anything out. It's kind of like that, you
Mm.
know. It gives some podium and space and respect to all these underlying mysterious systems that comprise us that we just don't know enough of, you know? So it's that, and somehow, according to the way he proposes and teaches everything, somehow that has beneficial effects on your well-being, on your success, which to me, somehow it makes sense. Like it's not even logical, because I just, on a feeling level, on an intuitive level, it makes sense to me, because the opposite doesn't work. As we discussed, like all the greatest conquerors in the world, they wanted it really bad. They did lots of crazy stuff, and they made some strides, and some of these things have been the biggest countries in the world for a
And
split second,
it didn't
before it
matter.
all crumbled.
And then lots of people had to die for it, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, and I mean, even that is a matter of perspective, but to me, that's the demonstration and depiction of the fact that, yeah, that's ego getting carried away, thinking that a single point of view can organize the rest of reality in a way where it would be harmonious and beneficial to everybody.
That just
That's not the way to do it. That's not possible.
that just remind me of Foundation. The whole
Yeah.
empire trying to survive it,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they're just like even
That's
created clones, so we have different perspective, different,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
it never worked, right? Like it's just never. You couldn't outpace the reality, right, of how
It's
complex.
essentially centralization, right? It's trying to centralize where everything revolves around one thing. And nature and the world doesn't work that way. There is no one pole, right? There's no one magnetic center. Nothing works like that. It's kind of all little distributed. It's all uneven, chaotic
Yeah.
systems in their own beautiful balance,
Yeah.
right? But what definitely doesn't work and can't work is like a bunch of lions come over the forest and say, "Oh yeah, we're gonna eat everybody tonight because we're that freaking we want to enjoy it that much." That won't work because that they're gonna die out tomorrow.
And remind me of how foundational the last episode of the, I guess, third season, where you know the the
Mm.
current Dusk, right? He basically killed everybody. It's like, you know
Yeah,
what?
holy
This
crap.
system has to go. Like, I don't
Yeah,
want to die. I want to be the one. You
yeah,
know?
just me.
He's like he just destroyed the whole system. It's like, nope, I'm not gonna go with this anymore. Right? He doesn't care about the predictions, it's not gonna work. I don't give he doesn't give a shit. And like, okay, I'm gonna continue with this. I got the weapon, I can wipe everything out, I can just do whatever I like, Screw this trying to propagate the dynasty in the way that they did, and trying to create new
Yeah, and
decants.
there's something to even that. That's like there's almost like one ego's rebelling against
Yeah,
another egoical structure.
it's like my way, right? Like, I'm the
Yeah.
one who's gonna bring peace to the galaxy, whatever, right? It's that kind of rebellion.
But it also something about that whole prediction thing. There's something because like prediction goes both ways, right? It's kind of like what also we explored in the analysis of Dune, where prediction is kind of like a scenario that is known, and that just knowing it causes you to adhere to it. Meaning, like it's like you pre-chosen something and you move towards some kind of target or design. But believing that prediction is accurate is the same as trying to adhere to it. It will work on you at least in subconscious ways. So in this way, I could see how like on an intuitive level it could make sense. Like no, screw the predictions. We're not going to trust any of this system. I'm not going to believe in it. I'm going to make my own way. There's something to that like what would you call it? Like I mean, there is some arrogance there for sure, but also it is some kind of rebellion against, against the system essentially, because that's what happens when people lose faith in a system.
Right.
And I mean, who else but one of the brothers is to make that decision? Should technically be their decision because if not theirs, then whose, right? Yeah, that show is so funky with these ideas because like what is even a human at that point if these people are being cloned, and what is their identity in
Yeah.
relation to the original guy, right? And what is the role of this
And
surviving
the
AI?
part with Day,
Yeah.
who gone with the drug binge, and it's like, I have enlightened myself. I don't need this anymore. It's all futile. It's like,
Yeah,
and then, well, screw you then. And
yeah.
he got eliminated. So
That
it's
could be this look as a whole show could be just around all the ways that the brothers from different iterations try to like escape reality
yeah.
essentially.
So they all recognize, oh, I'm part of this system. Oh, this is how
Yeah.
things work. Well, you know what?
So you have to
It's
like technically be the face of empire and do the ruling, but you're also still a human who wants to fuck around and then just have life.
Yeah.
It's
So it's
such a funny concept.
yeah. Eventually, the system breaks because even they can't
Yeah.
pretend that
No,
this is
yeah, they
gonna
had so many
continue.
episodes where they alluded to this, like, yeah, this guy ran away, this guy tried to escape. They have like a
Yeah.
whole system to keep tabs on them because they know the
Yeah.
human, like nobody can withstand it because it is kind of like living in a gilded cage, right?
Yeah, they all
So
have different reactions, right? And in the different eras, they have different reaction to it, and then so it's like, well, a part of that could be a problem, right? If you have a narrative you want to portray, and then somehow one of them do something that's counter to that, then you
yeah,
know, it's
but
like
just
that.
the whole thing is such a mind blast because like imagine you're come into existence, right? But you still then you recognize that you're this clone. and the memories have been, injected into you. So you technically have access to the memories, but you're not really that person.
Right.
So you're like
You're forming your own
such a
opinions.
mind
Yeah,
hustle.
you're
Yeah,
like you
that's like,
form your own opinions about
yeah,
current event and how you're supposed to deal with this
yeah, yeah.
problem, and
Because
it's
you essentially, at that point, you get a choice of like, do you claim a new identity or do you accept this, what you've been essentially like designed to be? It's the eternal paradox, right? The human, the choice. What are you gonna do? Are you gonna go along with the program, or do you want to do your own thing? That to me is like, man, some of these sci-fi shows are so freaking brilliant with these ideas. Like that's what they make you think about.
well, it's again like you were saying, read books because this is the source material. It's
Yeah.
what it brought to the forefront. Now, again, I think the show are great, like especially in this case, Foundation. I think they did a good job, like make it
Hmm.
more because originally I think a lot of people were saying the book is very dry. It's like long
Hmm.
and dry, but the idea is very cool, right? But they kind of make it into a cool show, right? You can enjoy it from a narrative kind of in the medium of a TV show, more of a drama type of, Yeah, it's definitely these ideas. Because this is what people think about, right? All these writers are like thinking about, oh, you know what, with this thing, yeah, why don't we do it this way? What if this happens? What if that happens?
Hmm.
And in the mind of in root of everything else, we don't know anything. Therefore, our imaginations, this is where it kick in. It's like, yeah, we can fill in the blank, right? Because there's so many things left unsaid, so many things that nobody have said anything about, right? Anything any human have ever said, that's just opinion, man. I mean, nobody else
Yeah.
had more of authoritative voice at all. I mean, yeah, we can find out about some facts about the world and this and that. We can come to agreement on that, and a lot of inventions happens because we do that. But there's so many other things we just can't come to agreement with, and we're just bickering, to this day. It always happens, from the big to the small to whatever in between, right? That's the human condition, the drama that just happens because it's like you can't agree on anything.
Hmm.
It should be this way, it should be that way, it should be, and then you just have to live with that.
Yeah, this is the other paradox that like everybody has their needs. This is also something I've been thinking recently about is that you live in the same society of people, and then there can literally be a group of people who will say, strawberries are good. We want strawberries. Let's all grow strawberries." And there will be somebody who's like allergic to strawberries, like they hate strawberries, like fuck strawberries.
Yeah.
But they live in that society. So what?
Right.
What? Like they're fucked.
Everybody
It's a
else,
paradox.
like, oh, he said that?
No, not the strawberries.
No, look, if somebody else lived the way I live, they go crazy. It's like
Worst
imagine,
starship possible.
right? Imagine you give another person a day to be transferred into my mind and experience my life for one day. They're like, what the fuck? It's like, no,
Oh God.
no,
Oh,
no,
it'd be
no,
institutionalized
no,
in
nope,
certain societies, bro.
nope, nah, hell nah. It's right. So
uh,
that's kind of how it is. Like we can't imagine how it is will be like to live in another person's life because it will be
yeah.
crazy. Because you'll be like so many things that doesn't make sense. It's like, wait, he did that because of what? And why does that make sense? Right? Because you wouldn't make sense to you. It makes sense to that
Also,
person, but
that's another fun thing to think about. Like, yeah, to what extent can you change and still be you? Because I'm not seeing it, dude. I'm not seeing the changes that much, Like if anything, I've been becoming more of the guy that I am throughout the years. Not like
you
I'm not
double
like being,
down.
yeah, I'm not being suddenly like, ooh, I'm this guy or I'm that guy. I'm kind of
Because
being consistent and the
it
same
just,
as I assume of most people, right? So you kind of you
yeah.
are who you are, and like there's nothing. What are you gonna do?
I don't think you can change yourself in that way where
Not
like
much,
just
right?
fundamentally change. Like this is not gonna happen.
it would need to be like a radical project where everything supports the changes, including your society and an environment. Somehow you would need to be transplanted
Yeah.
into a different situation and environment where like you don't have a choice but to be a different person. But that doesn't sound healthy.
Because if a person just suddenly changed so much, you're like, I don't trust this, right?
Yeah,
You're
what's
like,
going
no,
on?
something's wrong. This is not
Yeah,
right. This is not how, like, so this is the thing. I think when we're born, we're kind of set in our way in many ways. We're set, like, that's very
yeah.
hard to change. There's no,
Like man, there's some people out there that they're just freaking they're a problem. Like my mom used to know this woman. I don't know how they got in touch. Met somewhere, right? Some kind of actual way that they met. But they became friends for a while. But that person, this woman who was some like younger than her, she turned out to be like she had mental issues for sure. She was, I think her family was rich, but they cut her off because she was just like crazy. She was spending everything. She was not working, not doing anything, but she would got used to this lavish lifestyle where she would be going to restaurants, doing this and that, but she's not doing anything. She's not working, right? She's not getting money, but she was a fun person to be around. Like my mom hung out with her and went to events and they talked, they had good times, etc. But like eventually she would start getting behaving unhinged where she would like give my mom crap, like trying to ask her for money, like make her pay for stuff, essentially being like a manipulative kind of person who just wants to have fun at other people's expense. And my mom is a very generous, loyal person. She entertained it for a while, but eventually, like, no, there's no way. There's no way, dude. So it's over, right? But that's a person, dude. They are someone's headache right now.
yep.
What the hell is that? How is that? How is that a person?
Everybody is everybody else's problem, right? It's
Like, not necessarily. You're not causing any problems for anybody.
potentially, potentially. I'm sure I'm somebody's problem.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
Um, it's just that, right? Like Sartre said, hell is other people. It's just that's the potential. The hell can just be other people, that their existence
Yeah.
just be hell for you because of
Yeah.
how they seeing things or how what they want,
Yeah, that's true.
you know?
It's very true. Like there's something about I mean, I don't think the type of relationship even exists because where, everything is tip top. Because even that would be itself of a problem where it's
Yeah.
like too boring or something,
Yeah, exactly. Too good, right? It's going too
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
If there's no problem, no friction, no challenges, no, it's it's the same problem as like being bored, right?
Yeah.
How, as you say, right? If you stick to a schedule, well, then you feel like bored, and if you do too much of something and then, then you feel stressed as well.